Chapter 1581. After a formation grandmaster became famous, it was simply too easy for him to obtain cultivation resources. This was especially so for someone as famous as Tion. During these days he formed a good relationship with many major powers. He wasn't as tyrannical as he was back then when he went to the Yen clan. Instead, he was humble and courteous. Many major powers invited him to inscribe formations for them. As long as the price was good, Tion wouldn't reject them. At the same time, he also made many friends. For example, the Mo clan. Mo Junyi would occasionally come to visit him and invite him to the Mo clan. He would also frequently head to the transaction pavilions to trade for some treasures. Unknowingly, the cultivation resources on Tion grew more and more numerous. He purchased a large piece of land in the central city regions of Lifire City, and after some remodeling, it became his new residence. However, Tion also encountered some trouble. For example, someone issued a challenge to him from afar and the challenger was extremely famous. It was none other than the #1 genius of the younger generations from the Lu clan, Lu Feibai. Lu Feibai's talent was exceedingly high. He had cultivated for less than 1,000 years and was already at the mid-stage of the immortal emperor realm. His combat prowess was also extremely strong, and he was born in an aristocratic clan. Although those who were younger than 1,000 years old could be considered young, in truth, many of those from the older generations who had cultivated for countless years were far from being his match. This Lu Feibai issued a challenge to Tion and sent it to his residence, the Emperor Pavilion. Emperor Pavilion was a name given by Tion's serving girl. She felt that this name was very tyrannical and coincidentally, it was also Tion's surname. Hence Tion directly used it. Many people guessed that Tion was famous for his formations, but his combat prowess wasn't that strong. Even if he could borrow the power of a formation to fight, the power he could unleash would surely be limited. It was impossible for him to deal with the genius Lu Feibai. Could it be that the Yen clan invited Lu Feibai to act, wanting to use a challenge to kill Tion? Tion also suspected this. But only after Mo Junyi found him did he know that Lu Feibai challenged him not because of the Yen clan but because of Mo Junyi. The Lu clan hoped to form a marriage alliance with the Mo clan. Lu Feibai and Mo Junyi were undoubtedly extremely suitable in their eyes. Lu Feibai was also very satisfied with Mo Junyi, but Mo Junyi was very close to this grandmaster Tion. After knowing the reason, Tion was speechless. He had seen many things like this throughout his journey. Femme fatale, he didn't want to bother with her. Mo Junyi also felt helpless and felt a little apologetic. Hence, amidst the anticipation of everyone, Grandmaster D actually directly admitted defeat. Many people who were waiting to watch the show were all taken aback, some of them were speechless. There were many voices scolding Tion for being useless, not having the guts to accept Lu Feibai's challenge. He was extremely cowardly and as expected, other than having extraordinary attainments in formations, his martial path was mediocre. Naturally, there were also people who supported Tion. After all, although Lu Feibai was famous, his fame couldn't be compared to Grandmaster D. Saying that Tion was a coward? Have you guys forgotten how Tion killed his way into the Yen clan with just a serving girl? That single battle caused the Yen clan to lose all face. In addition, Grandmaster Tion is extraordinary in the Tao of formations. How could his combat prowess be weak? Don't forget that one could still borrow the power of a formation to fight. Back then in the Battle of Martial Formations, Grandmaster D had killed Grandmaster Yen Mu. He admitted defeat because he felt it was beneath him to accept Lu Feibai's challenge. In any case, there were all sorts of voices, but Tion completely ignored them. He was still busy with his own matters. Lu Feibai didn't give up just like that. He actually issued another challenge. Tion rejected again, directly admitting defeat, causing another commotion. There were even more people insulting Tion, saying that he only knew about formations. Just when the commotion in the outside world was getting louder, a piece of news suddenly circulated out from the Emperor Pavilion, shocking the central regions of Lifire City. Grandmaster D has forged an Emperor-ranked weapon, and would be auctioned off 3 days later. If one wishes to participate, they can directly come to the Emperor Pavilion. For a period of time, the central regions of Lifire City were in an uproar. Not long ago, because of Lu Feibai's challenge, There were many people scolding Tian for being cowardly and useless, saying that he was only proficient in formations and was weak in the martial Dao. But now the Emperor Pavilion actually released news that Grandmaster Tian had forged an Emperor-ranked weapon and was going to be auctioned off. Grandmaster Tian actually knew how to forge weapons. Not only was his attainment in formations extremely high, he was also able to forge divine weapons. For a period of time, Tian's fame soared even higher than before. However, there were still many people who were waiting to see what level of divine weapon Tian could forge. 3 days later, the Emperor Pavilion was incomparably lively. Many experts came to the Emperor Pavilion, including many aristocratic clans. Although the buildings in Lifire City were very expensive, the area was very vast. This was especially so for those expensive buildings. For example, this Emperor Pavilion was something that Tian had to pay a huge price to purchase. Outside a great hall in the Emperor Pavilion, there was a flight of stairs. Below the flight of stairs, there was a vast space where the crowd gathered. There was no banquet or reception because other than Tian, there was only a single serving girl of the immortal king in the Emperor Pavilion. There was basically no way for them to entertain so many people. This point was understandable. After all, their purpose here wasn't to attend any banquet. They were here to see the divine weapon Tian forged. Mo Fei, your Mo clan has such a good relationship with Grandmaster D. Could it be that you don't know any insider news? What divine weapon did this Grandmaster D forge exactly? Among the crowd, the people from the Mo clan arrived. Mo Fei and Mo Junyi were both present. I truly have no idea. That fellow Tian has always been mysterious. I'm the same as everyone else, I only received the news 3 days ago. Mo Fei laughed. Although he already knew that Tian knew how to forge weapons during the banquet back then, he still wanted to see what kind of divine weapon Tian would forge when the day came. Grandmaster D's attainments in formations are extremely high. Now that he is forging a divine weapon and gathered all the experts here, it would definitely be an extraordinary one. I'm filled with anticipation. Someone laughed. I once invited Grandmaster D to help me inscribe a formation. That formation is truly exquisite. A bunch of bootlickers. A mocking voice rang out. The gazes of everyone turned over and stared at the crowd. After that, they saw several figures gathered together. They were actually people from the Yan clan, and the person in the lead was none other than Yan Feng. I heard that your Mo clan even got Mo Junyi to use a honey trap on you. How could you not know about this divine weapon? Are you pretending to be mysterious? Yan Feng coldly mocked. Mo Fei frowned. Yan Feng, don't speak nonsense. Nonsense? Even Lu Feibai couldn't help but to challenge Tian. Why? Your Mo clan dares to do it, but you don't dare to admit it? Yan Feng's aura was extremely sharp, as a fiery heat gushed forth. Seems like back then when Tian challenged you, you didn't feel ashamed at all. Now, you actually have the face to take the initiative to challenge me? How ridiculous. Mo Fei mocked. Mo Junyi, who was at the side, also stared coldly at Yan Feng. This person's words were filled with thorns. Back then, if it wasn't for Tian avoiding the battle, he would already be a dead man. What's there to be ashamed of? As for me coming here today, it's precisely because I want to see how he would embarrass himself and what divine weapon he can forge. Yan Feng coldly spoke. Grandmaster Xianming, what do you think? Grandmaster Xianming. Everyone's eyes gleamed with sharpness when they heard this. They all turned their gazes over, staring at the mysterious figure beside Yan Feng. This person was actually the famous weaponsmith Grandmaster Xianming, whose name shook Lifire City many years ago. Did the Yan clan invite him here intentionally to humiliate Tian? Only to see that mysterious figure lowering his head slightly, removing the hood of his cloak. After that, he inclined his head, revealing a somewhat aged face. However, his eyes were extremely deep and filled with spirit. Grandmaster Xianming. Mo Fei's eyes flashed. The Yan clan really invited Grandmaster Xianming over. Seems like they came with ill intentions. A junior actually created a divine weapon and caused such a commotion? Is the weaponsmithing world of Lifire City so weak now? Grandmaster Xianming calmly spoke. For a period of time, the gazes of everyone turned to him, feeling some shock in their hearts. Grandmaster Xianming hasn't appeared for a very long time. Some people said that he was summoned by the Liefire Empyrean to forge weapons for the Liefire Palace, while others said that he went to focus on breaking through to the next cultivation level. But back then, he was extremely famous in the weaponsmithing world of this region. Every time he made a move, he would forge a high-grade Emperor-ranked weapon. It was unknown how many people would ask him for help, and he was much more popular compared to a formation Grandmaster. Grandmaster Xianming might not know this, but this young man is very famous in Liefire City, especially in the Tao of Formations. A group of people walked over. One of them casually laughed. So what of it? Although formations are the foundation of weaponsmithing, who says that just because one is proficient in formations, they would be able to forge high-grade divine weapons? To think that he even dared to publicly auction it and gather so many experts here. He truly knows how to play to the gallery. Grandmaster Xianming coldly mocked. For a period of time, many people felt awkward. They also noticed that the person who spoke earlier was actually someone from the Liu clan. The young immortal emperor, Liu Feibai, stood beside the person who spoke and nodded his head lightly at Mo Junyi. Grandmaster Xianming might not know this. This man is not only trying to play to the gallery, he is also cowardly and cowardly. My clan's Liu Feibai has sent many letters of challenge to the Emperor Pavilion, yet he chose to avoid it and even took the initiative to concede. Where does he have the pride of a grandmaster? That elder from the Liu clan shook his head. Mo Fei, you better tell Junyi not to get too close to such a person. He is too hypocritical and not pragmatic. I know what I'm doing. Mo Fei calmly replied, feeling somewhat depressed. It's fine if the Yin clan came to cause trouble, but your Liu clan has no grudge with Ditian and only wanted to form a marriage alliance. Why must you vent your anger on Ditian? After all, although they were close to Ditian, they didn't really want Mo Junyi to marry him. You people are truly ridiculous. My clan's young master wants to publicly auction a divine weapon, yet he didn't invite anyone here. Everyone came here to support my young master, but since you all feel disdain, just don't come. Why are you insulting him with words? Did anyone tell you to come? How ridiculous. The serving girl from the Heavenly God Pavilion couldn't help but to speak. Chapter 1582. Audacious. Yin Feng's eyes were extremely cold. Terrifying streams of fire shot out from his eyes, causing the serving girl to scream in shock as she closed her eyes. Yin Feng, don't you think you're lacking in grace by bullying a serving girl? Mo Fei coldly spoke. Yin Feng coldly snorted. Didn't you hear how she spoke to an elder? Grandmaster Xianming is also here. Who does this little lass think she is? She actually dares to shoot her mouth off. If it wasn't for the fact that killing is prohibited in the city, she would already be a dead man now. If killing is permitted in the city, you definitely wouldn't be able to walk out of this courtyard. A cold voice rang out. Yin Feng's eyes flashed. After that, he saw a figure walking out from the ancient hall. Who else could it be other than Ditian? At this moment, Ditian was still wearing his mask. His black hair was as black as ink, casually draped over his shoulders. His eyes were extremely cold as he stared at Yin Feng. Where did this old dog come from? Did I invite you in? Barking in my place? Boom! As the sound of Ditian's voice faded, an extremely cold intent gushed forth from Yin Feng. His long robes fluttered even though there was no wind. His eyes were blazing with a fiery light, as though they were about to shoot out from his eyes. Ditian insulted him by calling him an old dog? Barking in a place like this? What did you say? Yin Feng took a step forward, causing the ground to tremble. Are you deaf? Ditian glanced at Yin Feng. There was no respect in his cold eyes. Back then when he left the Yin clan, he had already said that as long as the Yin clan was willing to give up, there would be no grudges between them. However, the Yin clan had no intentions of letting him off. Now they came to his Emperor Pavilion and even threatened his serving girl. How preposterous! You came to my place and humiliated me? Did I invite you all here? Ditian continued. His gaze then turned to Grandmaster Xianming. I don't care who you are or where did you come from. If you came here sincerely, you are a guest. If you want to cause trouble, scram immediately. Impudent. Grandmaster Xianming's expression changed. But before he could speak, an expert from the Liu clan at the side angrily berated. Do you know who you are talking to? You two. If you don't want to come, scram. Dition directly flicked his sleeves, exuding a domineering aura. The gazes of everyone froze as they stared at the scene before their eyes. This Grandmaster D really had a personality. No matter who you are, be it Grandmaster Xianming or an expert from the Liu clan, since you dared to create trouble here, just scram. However, the truth was as such. Although Grandmaster Xuanming's status was high, and the Liu clan was also a powerful aristocrat clan, this place was still Grandmaster D's residence after all. You guys came to someone else's residence and spouted nonsense. Even a clay doll would have anger, let alone Grandmaster D, who dared to kill his way into the Yen clan to issue a challenge. Dition was originally an extremely arrogant person. How would he allow others to act so impudently in his residence? A junior dares to be so disrespectful to a senior. This is simply unheard of. Today my horizons have been broadened. Grandmaster Xianming stared at Dition as he slowly spoke. I've traversed many places in the weaponsmithing world and have seen many arrogant people. However, I've never seen someone like you before. You merely created a divine weapon, yet you're trying to gain the limelight, causing a huge commotion, and you even dared to publicly auction it off. What treasure do you think you can create? You are simply a disgrace to the weaponsmithing world. Flaunting your seniority, the serving girl beside Dition mumbled. Dition coldly laughed as he replied, even if I created a useless weapon, I'm willing to auction it off. That's my own business. It's my honor that a friend is willing to come. Did I force anyone to come? Did I invite you here? As for being a senior, you are merely a little old and yet you can be called a senior? Are you even worthy? Also, you keep talking about the weaponsmithing world. You represent the entire weaponsmithing world. Do you still want this old face of yours? Dition's words were sharp, directly piercing through the hearts of others. If others respected him, he would naturally respect them. As for those who came to his residence to create trouble, why would he need to show any respect? Since you want to humiliate me, why would I still need to be polite to you? Too impudent, too impudent. Grandmaster Xuanming's eyes flashed with killing intent after being humiliated by Dition. Yan Feng, who was at the side, felt the same as well. A terrifying aura radiated from him. He stared at Grandmaster Xianming. Grandmaster, I invited you here today, yet I was humiliated by a thief. This is my sin. Lord Governor. At this moment Dition's gaze turned to the crowd. There were several figures there, and one of them was the vice governor of the governor's manor. Dition had met him before. That vice governor nodded. Someone invaded my residence. Do I have the authority to expel them? Dition asked. Naturally. That vice governor nodded. If they don't obey and even resist, do I have the authority to kill them? Dition asked again. Invading a private residence and even daring to resist? Master can make the decision based on the situation. That vice governor calmly nodded. It wasn't that he was biased towards Dition, but rather, this was the rule of the governor's manor. After all the buildings in Lifire City were purchased by others using a large amount of resources. The residences of others were considered private property, and naturally, no one was allowed to barge in. The governor's manor needed protection. Everyone, the Emperor Pavilion doesn't welcome you guys. Please leave. Dition glanced at Yan Feng, Grandmaster Xianming, and the people from the Liu clan. He didn't hesitate to issue the expulsion order. No matter what your identity is, as long as you are here to create trouble, sorry, you can scram. Preposterous. Grandmaster Xuanming's anger burned. No matter where he went, there would always be people who didn't respect him. But today he was actually being chased away in front of everyone. This was simply preposterous. Grandmaster Xianming is a person of virtue and prestige. His attainments in weaponsmithing are profound. Grandmaster D, can you please be a little more humble? A person reminded. Dition's eyes flashed, directly landing on that person as he coldly laughed. Since Grandmaster Xianming is a person of virtue and prestige, why don't you accompany him out? I won't send you off. That person's expression froze, extremely unsightly to behold. Dition, although you are a formations grandmaster and you are even fooling around in weaponsmithing, it's best if you don't act too arrogantly. Doing this won't bring you any benefits. Could it be that you have already forgotten about the challenge a few days ago? I told you to scram. Di Tian coldly spoke. Everyone who came here today were originally guests. However, there are some people who think too highly of themselves. If there's anyone who can't stand the sight of me, please leave together with me. I'm sure the items I concoct wouldn't be able to enter your sights. Please leave. Didan. At this moment a calm voice rang out. Di Tian glanced at the person who spoke. It was none other than Lu Fei Bai. It was none other than the person who challenged him twice. I've challenged the Emperor Pavilion twice before, but you rejected both times. Now I'm challenging you for the third time. Do you accept? Lu Fei Bai's voice was calm as he challenged Di Tian once again. The eyes of everyone turned sharp as they landed on Di Tian. Di Tian directly replied, I'm not free. He rejected again. Seems like this Di Tian's strength is truly too weak. Everyone replied, coward. An expert from the Lu clan coldly laughed. Let's go. Since he doesn't welcome us, let's head out. Let's hope that one day, Grandmaster D would be able to accept the challenge in an upright manner. Sir, I heard that this Lu Fei Bai's cultivation base is at the mid-stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. How can he be so arrogant when he challenges you? You don't want to bother with him. Yet the people from the Lu clan are still so full of themselves. Why don't you try challenging the immortal kings of their Lu clan? Let's see if there are any peak-stage immortal kings from their Lu clan who would accept the challenge. A serving girl at the side spoke in a light voice, her words causing the Lu clan's expert to pause. He turned his head and glanced over again, only to see Di Tian laughing mockingly. Not everyone can be so shameless. The expressions of the people from the Lu clan grew even more unsightly when they heard this. They coldly snorted and continued walking out. Grandmaster Xianming, let's go. Yan Feng icily spoke. Let's go outside and see what divine weapon he can take out. How embarrassing. Grandmaster Xianming coldly spoke. Since you want to see so much, I will grant you your wish. Alright, there's no need for all of you to scram. I'll allow you all to stay here and watch. Di Tian suddenly changed his mind, causing the people from the Lu clan to halt. Grandmaster Xianming and the people from the Yin clan who were preparing to leave were all stunned as they stared at Di Tian. Looks of bewilderment appeared on everyone's faces. It seemed that this Di Tian was very confident in the divine weapon he forged. I'll wait and see. Grandmaster Xianming icily spoke. In that case, take a good look at what kind of trash I forged exactly. Di Tian stared at him. After that, his finger moved as a bright light flashed. A sword appeared in his hand. This sword was actually black in color and wasn't sharp at all, as though it had never been sharpened. It was dull and lusterless, and there wasn't any powerful aura exuding from it. With a single glance one could tell that this was a complete trash. Are you playing with me? Grandmaster Xianming coldly spoke. Why do you say that? Di Tian coldly laughed. This is also a divine weapon? Naturally. Di Tian affirmed. This old man has forged countless weapons and seen countless divine weapons. Forgive me for my poor eyesight, but I can only tell that this is a trash weapon. You caused such a huge commotion and wanted to auction it off. Is this trash weapon? Grandmaster Xianming pointed at Di Tian. If not, why would I say that you are old? When one is old, it's better not to embarrass yourself in front of others. Di Tian lightly stroked the sword as numerous runes lit up. It was as though something was broken as a crisp crackling sound rang out. The sword was still that unsharpened sword, but in the air resplendent astral light cascaded downwards, landing on the sword. Evidently, this was an emperor-ranked weapon. Seal? You used a sealing technique to seal the power of the sword, just to show off? Grandmaster Xianming coldly spoke, not bothering to mention his earlier deduction. Di Tian mockingly glanced at him. On the surface of the sword, runes flowed unceasingly as the astral light in the air grew increasingly resplendent. A beam of light connected the heavens to the sword, illuminating all 8 directions. From the terrifying aura radiating from the sword, one could easily guess the grade of the sword. At this moment, the gazes of everyone who felt the sword might froze, including Grandmaster Xianming. His countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Chapter 1583. An Emperor-ranked weapon. Not only was it an Emperor-ranked weapon, from the aura radiating from it, one could tell that it was a high-grade Emperor-ranked weapon. Dition, an initial stage immortal emperor, was able to forge a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. The forging of weapons was different from inscribing formations. In order to forge a divine weapon, formations were the foundation. If one wanted to forge a divine weapon, they would need the support of formations. Hence, normally speaking, forging weapons was much more complicated compared to inscribing formations. High-grade emperor-ranked weapons were able to amplify the attacks of peak-stage immortal emperors. If one had a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon, the strength of a peak-stage immortal emperor would be greatly boosted. From this, one could very well imagine how valuable it was. Although there were many grand completion immortal emperors in Livefire City, peak-stage immortal emperors were considered characters at the upper echelons of the major powers. From this, one could very well imagine how high the status of a craftsman who could forge a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon was. Why was Grandmaster Xianming so highly respected? Even Yanfeng had to refer to him as Grandmaster, and there were even people speaking up for him in Dition's clan? There was no other reason. It was because Grandmaster Xianming could forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons. Even peak-stage immortal emperors would need his help. As for initial stage and mid-stage immortal emperors, any weapon Grandmaster Xianming casually forged would be treasures to them. Who wouldn't want to have a good relationship with such a Grandmaster? But at this moment, Dition actually managed to forge a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. For a period of time, everyone fell silent as their hearts pounded. They knew that from this moment onwards, Grandmaster Dition's status was no longer the same as before. Grandmaster Xianming and Yanfeng's expressions were as ugly as they could be. The expressions of those from the Liu clan also twitched. Only Mo Fei from the Mo clan felt his heart pounding as a look of joy appeared on his face. A high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. Seems like it wasn't wrong to maintain a good relationship with Dition. Mo Junyi, who was beside him, had a strange look in her eyes. Why was this fellow so powerful? Grandmaster, is this a trash? Dition pointed the sword in his hand at Grandmaster Xianming as he coldly mocked. Xuanming's expression turned ashen. Not long ago he was insulting Dition, saying that Dition's concoction was trash. How could an initial stage immortal emperor concoct something good? But in the blink of an eye, Dition actually took out a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. How face was this smacking? Disrespect my senior? Dition didn't intend to spare Grandmaster Xianming. Since Grandmaster Xianming sent himself to his doorstep to slap his face, he might as well do what he did to the Yan clan previously. He would step on Grandmaster Xianming and prove his weaponsmithing capabilities. In that case, the repercussions he would cause would naturally be more intense. Your mouth is filled with humiliation, flaunting your seniority and thinking yourself infallible. Grandmaster, may I ask if you feel that you are qualified to be called a senior? Dition asked. How arrogant. So what if you manage to forge this sovereign armament? It's merely the simplest high-grade sovereign armament. Grandmaster Xianming was able to forge high-grade sovereign armaments many years ago. What qualifications do you have to strut around in front of him? Ignorant. Yanfeng was already riding a tiger, and it was hard for him to dismount. He knew he had lost face this time around, but he still had to endure it to the end. He mustn't weaken his momentum and borrow Grandmaster Xuanming's fame to suppress Dition. The simplest high-grade monarch weapon? Dition mockingly laughed. I'm going to use this weapon to attack. You are a peak-stage immortal emperor. Do you dare to test its might? Why not? Yanfeng coldly spoke. This moment, how could he retreat? In addition, he was very confident in his own strength. Given Dition's initial stage immortal emperor cultivation base, how could Dition threaten him with a peak-stage emperor-ranked weapon? With a flash of his silhouette, Yanfeng directly soared into the air. Resplendent astral light cascaded down from the sky. Yanfeng, who was immersed in the astral light, was like a god of fire. His entire person seemed to be on fire, giving off an extremely powerful feeling. Dition brandished his sword. His silhouette flashed as he soared into the air. Yanfeng stared at him, his eyes filled with flames as a faint killing intent flickered within. He actually wanted to take this chance to kill Dition, to prevent any future troubles. After all, Dition was the one who suggested to fight. If he killed Dition, he didn't know what attitude the governor's manor would have. Kill. Dition didn't give Yanfeng too much time to think. He stabbed out with his sword, and in an instant, an incomparably resplendent beam of emperor light gushed forth. In just an instant, the black sword that had yet to be sharpened suddenly erupted with a terrifying sealing light. In just an instant, boundless sealing light enveloped the area, enveloping Yin Feng. The astral light that cascaded down from the sky suddenly stopped. Yin Feng's entire person was enveloped by the sealing light. The astral light no longer cascaded down, and the law energy around him seemed to have been isolated as well. He actually had no way to control it as he wished. Yin Feng's expression turned extremely unsightly. He punched out with a terrifying fist of fire, manifesting a beam of destructive light, wanting to break through everything, frenziedly tearing apart the sealing light. Go! Ditian waved his hand. A moment later, his sword pierced through the air, directly colliding with that beam of destructive light. From the surface of the sword, an incomparably ferocious sealing light radiated forth, causing that beam of destructive light to be directly sealed away. The power of that beam of sealing light weakened unceasingly before vanishing. However, that sealing sword continued to borrow the astral light to unleash more sealing light towards Yin Feng, causing Yin Feng to feel as though his hands and feet were tied up. The hearts of everyone trembled when they saw this scene in the air. The black sword hummed. Although it had yet to be sharpened and seemed like a useless sword, at this moment, they all knew how terrifying this sword was. Come back. Ditian spoke. The sword flew back into his hand as he returned to the platform. The sealing light in the air dissipated as Yin Feng stepped out. His expression was as unsightly as it could be. Yin Feng was a peak-stage immortal emperor, yet he was actually trapped by a sword. Although it was only for a short moment, he was still trapped. In addition, even the law energy around him was sealed. Sir, this sword is truly very simple. It actually didn't manage to kill him. The little serving girl mumbled in a depressed manner, causing Yin Feng to almost cough out blood from anger. Was this sword simple? Earlier Yin Feng said it himself. But what about now? His old face was completely lost. A simple sword actually managed to seal him. Right now, even that serving girl was mocking him. Everyone glanced at each other, feeling shocked in their hearts. If one had this sword, as long as the wielder of the sword was a little stronger, it would be sufficient to kill Yin Feng. This Ditian was the same as back then when he entered the Yin clan. Shocking the world with a single brilliant feat, Ditian glanced at the serving girl beside him as he laughed silently in his heart. Did she want to anger Yin Feng to death? Grandmaster D's attainments in the Tao of formations are extremely high. I didn't expect that his attainments in the Tao of weaponsmithing would also reach such an extent. Compared to Grandmaster D, I'm truly ashamed. Someone sighed. Just based on the appearance of this sealing sword, Grandmaster D's fame is sufficient to sweep through Lifire City. What's even more shocking is that Grandmaster D is only at the initial stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. If his cultivation base grows stronger in the future, his attainments in the Tao of formations and weaponsmithing would surely be even more impressive. At that time, I simply don't dare to imagine what would happen. In the crowd, voices rang out one after another. These were all powers that maintained a friendly relationship with Ditian. Before this, the Yin clan brought Grandmaster Xianming over, and the Lu clan made things difficult for him. It wasn't good for them to say anything. But right now, the talent Ditian displayed was already something that the Yin clan and Grandmaster Xianming couldn't suppress. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that just based on this sealing sword, in addition to Ditian's cultivation base and attainments in the Tao of formations, his status had already faintly surpassed Grandmaster Xianming. If they didn't express their stance now, when would they? Although Grandmaster Xianming was a person of virtue and prestige, it was very rare for him to appear in public. As for Ditian, he was truly here, and he maintained a friendly relationship with many major powers. Grandmaster formations and weaponsmithing grandmasters. At this moment, they naturally felt more inclined towards Ditian. Many people spoke one after another. Grandmaster Xianming and the others were completely ignored. The expressions of the people from the Lu clan were the ugliest. This was especially so for the person in the lead. He faintly felt some regret. They originally had no grudge with Ditian. Now, it could be said that they had completely offended Ditian. Such a powerful weaponsmithing grandmaster would definitely have even greater accomplishments in the future. In the future, It would be impossible for them to invite him to forge an emperor-ranked weapon. Let's go. Grandmaster Xianming flicked his sleeves and departed. There was no need for Di Tian to chase him away. He himself didn't have the face to stay behind. He felt some resentment towards the Yan clan in his heart. If it wasn't for the Yan clan inviting him here to humiliate Di Tian, he wouldn't have lost so much face. Yan Feng and the others also left. The killing intent in their hearts grew even stronger. The people from the Lu clan also silently left. Lu Feibai cast a deep glance at Di Tian before glancing at Mo Junyi. After that he departed. Grandmaster formations and weaponsmithing grandmasters. Even if the Mo clan didn't have such thoughts in the past, they would most probably have such thoughts now. Di Tian, you are simply a miracle. Mo Fei walked up and laughed. Elder Mo Fei praises me too much. I have to thank Elder Mo Fei for coming here. Di Tian became humble again as he smiled. Not at all. How can I not come when such a powerful emperor-ranked weapon is being auctioned? If the people of Lifire City knew that you could forge such a powerful weapon, I'm afraid this place wouldn't be able to contain so many people. Ha ha ha. Mo Fei laughed. Grandmaster D, isn't the auction about to begin? We can't wait any longer. An expert from a major power laughed. Okay. Since this is the case, let's start the auction then. Everyone, if you like it, feel free to bid. Di Tian spoke. I bid 1,000 high-grade emperor stones. Someone spoke. You want to exchange for such a treasure with just 1,000 high-grade emperor stones? I bid 3,000. Someone laughed. Everyone drew in a deep breath as their hearts trembled. Even Di Tian couldn't help but feel his heart pounding. A good divine weapon was simply a treasure. The price of a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon was already sky-high. Ordinary peak-stage immortal emperors might not even be able to afford it. My Mo clan has to obtain this weapon no matter what. Everyone, don't snatch it from me. At this moment, Mo Fei walked up the stairs and smiled. Di Tian, I just so happen to have a treasure in my hands. I'll add 3,000 high-grade emperor stones and exchange it with you. As he spoke, he took out a cauldron. Within the cauldron, there was actually an inextinguishable flame that exuded a fearsome might, as though it could melt everything. Di Tian's eyes flashed. He could tell with a single glance that this was a treasure, and it was a weapon-forging treasure. How about it? Is there anyone who can compete with me? Mo Fei laughed as he stared at everyone. Many people were silently shocked. This cauldron itself was a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. Not only did he use it to exchange, he even added 3,000 high-grade emperor stones. Such a price truly wasn't something the others could afford. No one competed. Di Tian laughed as he stared at Mo Fei. Could it be that this fellow came prepared? He actually prepared such a treasure. If he could forge a mid-grade emperor-ranked weapon, would Mo Fei take out this cauldron? Di Tian felt somewhat curious. Chapter 1584. The sealing sword was obtained by Elder Mo Fei of the Mo clan. Everyone naturally congratulated him. Di Tian stared at the crowd and smiled. Today, the auction of this divine weapon is only one of my reasons for inviting all of you here. I still have another matter to announce. Oh, everyone stared at Di Tian, feeling somewhat curious. Could it be that there were other surprises? Everyone should have already seen that the Emperor Pavilion isn't small and can accommodate many people. Hence, I've decided to turn the Emperor Pavilion into a trading ground for treasures. If there are any friends who are willing to come here to trade, I won't charge any fees and will provide the location of the Emperor Pavilion to everyone for free. In addition, I will also be responsible for the tributes from the governor's manor. Di Tian smiled. Mo Junyi's eyes flashed. Was her father's words about to come true? Di Tian's ambitions truly weren't limited to inscribing formations and forging weapons. He basically didn't want to be satisfied with that. Right now, he actually wanted to open a trading pavilion. Seems like his ambitions weren't small at all. After today's matter circulated out, Di Tian's fame would surely spread throughout Lifire City. He would become a character that no one dared to approach. An initial stage immortal emperor forging a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon. How could this not cause a commotion? The news of the trading pavilion would naturally spread out, and many people would come here to trade with him. For the sake of managing the trading pavilion, I still need to recruit some experts to work for the Emperor Pavilion. Although I don't dare to say how good the treatment will be, it will be comparable to the governor's manor. As long as there are people who are willing to trust me, ID will definitely not mistreat them. As for the time limit, I will set a limit of 10 years. Every 10 years we will renegotiate the treatment. If you are unhappy, you can leave. I won't interfere with your freedom. Dition continued. The beautiful eyes of the serving girl at the side blinked. Was the young master finally planning to expand his influence? Lastly, on this day every month, I will take out an emperor-ranked weapon to auction. On this day every year, I will take out a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon to auction. I welcome everyone to come to my Emperor Pavilion often. Dition laughed. A commotion broke out again as everyone felt their hearts trembling. Everyone had seen the divine weapons forged by Dition before. They contained sealing energy within them, and were able to seal the laws of their opponents. They were extremely useful in combat. Given Dition's fame, in the future when he auctioned off emperor-ranked weapons, there would definitely be many guests. Alright, that's all for now. I hope everyone can help me spread the news. In addition, I also welcome all of you to come to my Emperor Pavilion often. Dition clasped his hands and smiled to everyone. Extremely polite. Everyone also started to bid their farewells and departed. There were some major powers who stayed behind and chatted with Dition for a while before they departed as well. Emofe smiled at Dition. This move of yours is truly ruthless. Tell me, is the transaction pavilion just a passing phase? Are you planning to open an auction house in the future? Elder Emofe's eyes are truly sharp. It's just that there shouldn't be any conflicts between the auction house and the transaction pavilion, right? They are both used for transactions. In the future, as long as it's an exquisite treasure, we can just bring it out for auction. Your idea isn't bad, but you need time to consolidate it. Even if you will become extremely wealthy very soon, in order to maintain the operations of an auction house, you need an endless supply of treasures. You need people to trust you and be willing to sell their treasures to you. In that case, you need a sufficient flow of people. This place of yours is simply too small. Emofe spoke. Hence, before I open an auction house, I will only auction emperor-ranked weapons. I will first provide a trading ground for free. As long as the popularity of the Emperor Pavilion rises, the flow of people naturally wouldn't be a problem. I believe that as long as the operations are done well, this place will become a bustling trading ground sooner or later. At most, we can just buy the surrounding land from the governor's manor. Dition laughed. Seems like you have already thought it through. In that case, I'll wait and see. Emofe stared at Dition. Emojuni's beautiful eyes flickered with a gentle smile. You are truly a monster. I really want to see what kind of face is hidden beneath your mask. Since I'm a monster, I'm naturally ugly. Dition laughed. Emojuni rolled her eyes. I don't believe you. Alright, I'll return first to report this to the clan leader. Emofe bid farewell and departed. Sir. After everyone left, the serving girl stared at Dition, wanting to say something but hesitating. What's wrong? Dition asked. Sir, in the future when the Emperor Pavilion expands, there would surely be many people by your side. Little Zhu. The serving girl weakly spoke. Dition smiled and glanced at her. Little Zhu, in the future when the Emperor Pavilion expands, you will still be the head butler. Many thanks, sir. The serving girl laughed happily. I don't need a head butler. I just want all the females to be under my care. Dition had a face filled with black lines. He glanced at the serving girl. Her words were filled with ambiguity. Little Zhu also seemed to realize that she had said something wrong. Her eyes flickered as she directly fled. The news of what happened in the Emperor Pavilion soon circulated around Lifire City with shocking speed. A formation grandmaster was sufficient to become famous. A formation grandmaster that could forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons. His fame was sufficient to spread out of the central city regions to the entire Lifire City. After all, weaponsmiths were characters that everyone paid attention to. This was especially so when Dition became famous because he trampled on Grandmaster Xuanming's shoulders. Grandmaster Xianming was a famous character. But this time around he wanted to humiliate Dition but was smacked in the face instead. In addition to the Yen clan and Lu clan, this was sufficient to cause a huge commotion. No wonder Grandmaster D didn't accept Lu Feibai's challenge. Lu Feibai wasn't qualified at all. Although Lu Feibai's talent was outstanding, what sort of character was Grandmaster D? He was a grandmaster that could forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons. How could his status be compared to Lu Feibai? Hence, the atmosphere of the Emperor Pavilion became incomparably lively overnight. Many experts answered the summons and many unaffiliated immortal kings were willing to work for the Emperor Pavilion. Given Grandmaster D's capabilities, he would surely be able to earn a vast amount of cultivation resources in the future. He most probably wouldn't mistreat them. Little Zhu also recruited a few female immortal kings to work for D Tian. These female immortal kings were all from some of the smaller clans in Lifire City. Since they could serve Grandmaster D, their clans were naturally willing. What made D Tian feel funny was that Little Zhu's choice of people was very strange. She wanted beautiful women to serve D Tian, but they mustn't be too beautiful. At the very least, they mustn't be inferior to her. However, the number of people who came to the Emperor Pavilion to trade was still very little. After all, there were many large-scale trading grounds in Lifire City. Many people were used to doing business there. Although D Tian's fame was very great now, when trading, everyone would first consider the location with the most people. If they came to the Emperor Pavilion to trade, what use would it be if no one was interested in them? After all, the Emperor Pavilion had just started and wasn't mature yet. However, very swiftly, a shocking piece of news circulated out. The Mo clan actually joined forces with the Emperor Pavilion. An elder of the Mo clan, Mo Fei, became the Grand Supervisor of the Emperor Pavilion. The daughter of the Mo clan leader, Mo Ting, also joined the Emperor Pavilion and would be in charge of the auction of Grandmaster D's divine weapons. Also, they released news that they would be working for the Emperor Pavilion for 100 years. This meant that for the next 100 years, they would all be people of the Emperor Pavilion. Mo Fei was an elder with a high status in the Mo clan while Mo Junyi was a princess of the Mo clan. The two of them also brought many people from the Mo clan to the Emperor Pavilion, causing a commotion in the outside world. Two immortal emperors also joined the Emperor Pavilion and signed a 10-year contract. During these 10 years, they had to serve the Emperor Pavilion and D Tian would reward them accordingly. In the backyard of the Emperor Pavilion, D Tian, Mo Fei and Mo Junyi were all present. D Tian took out an interspatial ring and passed it to Mo Junyi. These are the divine weapons I forged during these few days. It should be sufficient for a few years to be auctioned. Junyi, you can arrange the auction order yourself. I'll leave this to you. You trust me so much? Mo Junyi warmly smiled, winking at D Tian. In the future, the development of my Emperor Pavilion will depend on you. How can I not trust you? D Tian laughed. I don't have such capabilities. Mo Junyi pouted. Who says you don't? Just based on your beauty, just by standing there, you would be able to increase the price of my divine weapons. D Tian joked. Mo Fei and Little Zhu both laughed, while Mo Junyi glared at D Tian. Elder Mo Fei. D Tian called out. Pavilion Lord, you should address me as the Grand Supervisor now. At the very least, this is how it should be for the next 100 years. Mo Fei laughed. Okay, Grand Supervisor. From now on, the Emperor Pavilion will be handed to you. I'm preparing to cultivate for a period of time. You will be in charge of everything here. D Tian laughed. What? The Emperor Pavilion has just been established, and you want to be a shopkeeper who doesn't have to do anything? Mo Fei was dumbfounded. Who asked you to take the initiative to send yourself to my doorstep? I'm not as proficient in these matters as you, Grand Supervisor. Since you, Junyi and Little Zhu are here, how would I have anything to do? Remember to help me gather some materials. I will be in charge of forging divine weapons. D Tian laughed. Before this, he initially wanted to wait until the Emperor Pavilion was on the right track before considering the matter of cultivation. It was just that he didn't expect Mo Fei and Mo Junyi to take the initiative to help him. He understood the Mo clan's intentions and knew how to act appropriately. As long as the Mo clan helped him to develop the Emperor Pavilion, he naturally wouldn't mistreat the Mo clan in the future. You are ruthless. Mo Fei speechlessly spoke. In that case, I will leave the Emperor Pavilion to you all. D Tian laughed. After speaking, he actually turned and departed, causing Mo Fei and Mo Junyi to be completely speechless. A month after the first auction, the Emperor Pavilion officially auctioned off its second divine weapon. It was unknown how many experts came to the Emperor Pavilion. All of them came because of Grandmaster D's fame, and wanted to personally witness the divine weapons forged by him. Hence, today many people set up a transaction point in the Emperor Pavilion. The auction was very smooth and it was another ceiling-type divine weapon. Although it was a mid-grade Emperor-ranked weapon, it still caused a huge commotion. There were also many transactions completed in the Emperor Pavilion, causing people to think that the Emperor Pavilion had already become a mature transaction point. However, after the day ended, many people directly left, not giving any face to the Emperor Pavilion at all. Hence, Grand Supervisor Mo Fei couldn't help but set a rule. Those who wanted to set up a transaction point in the Emperor Pavilion had to sign a contract with the Emperor Pavilion for a year. In this year, they had to set up a transaction point in the Emperor Pavilion for at least 100 days. If not, they can forget about taking advantage of the Emperor Pavilion on the day of the auction. Such a binding method was clearly very effective. Next, many people signed contracts with the Emperor Pavilion. Hence, the Emperor Pavilion's transaction point gradually became lively as more and more people came. Chapter 1585. You? Do you believe that the Livefire Empyrean will strip you of your position? Lin Ba laughed. Also, from what I know, this woman is the daughter of an aristocrat clan in Xiaoho's region. Being able to do this is already considered not bad. If it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to recruit this grandmaster, this aristocrat clan wouldn't have done this. Everyone, welcome to the Emperor Pavilion to participate in this auction. I know everyone is already impatient to see what kind of treasure Grandmaster D Tian has forged. This little girl won't waste any more words. Grandmaster D, please take out your divine weapon for everyone to see. Mo Junyi smiled. Beauty Zhao's eyes were like silk. Although she is very beautiful, she isn't suitable to host the auction. She lacks charisma. If it's me, it would be more suitable. Mo Fei's voice was ice cold. Mo Junyi's expression also turned unsightly as she coldly spoke. Is there really no one who can resolve this matter? Other than this, there was another place that attracted D Tian's attention. Xiaoho sat in the central seat. Other than him, Lin Ba, Beauty Zhao, and Yin Qiu were all present. This meant that out of the 5 governors of Livefire City, 4 of them had come. From this, one could see how famous D Tian was now. The entire Livefire City knew of him. Mo Fei's eyes flashed. After that, he coldly spoke. This Xiaoho is truly arrogant to the extreme. My Emperor Pavilion's businesses can't be considered big yet. He actually classified us as a first-tier power and collected so much tribute. What a bully. My judgment naturally wouldn't be wrong. This D Tian is definitely young and handsome. His aura is so steady, and he is already famous despite being at the initial stage of the immortal Emperor realm. If there's a chance, I must definitely invite him to my governor's manor to play. Beauty Zhao's smile was extremely charming. Yin Qiu coldly spoke. Beauty Zhao, you have never invited me before, right? Is he Grandmaster D? What a demeanor, he must be extremely handsome. Beauty Zhao's eyes were like silk, exuding boundless charm. Today, she was still wearing a revealing dress, revealing her snow-white thighs, causing many to sneak glances in her direction. But because she was sitting together with Xiaoho, some people guessed that she might be Xiaoho's subordinate. Hence, no one dared to be impudent. Are you preparing to activate the auction? Mo Fei's eyes flashed with sharpness. Most importantly, he has an official status and doesn't need to rely on you. Even if he wants an emperor-ranked weapon, he can find other weaponsmiths. Grandmaster D, Beauty Zhao, there is no need to not give me face. Yin Qiu was depressed. Back then, the first time Grandmaster D Tian acted, he took out a high-grade emperor-ranked weapon and ruthlessly smacked the faces of Grandmaster Xianming and the Yin clan. After that, Grandmaster D Tian rarely appeared again. Right now, Grandmaster D Tian was acting in such a high-profile manner. The emperor-ranked weapon he wanted to auction must surely be an extraordinary one. How could everyone not be concerned? Right now, Grandmaster D's fame was extremely great. This was also normal. It was impossible for him to be the same as before, able to invite everyone. Since Grandmaster D could forge high-grade Emperor-ranked weapons, how could he waste time to help you set up some minor formations? That was obviously impossible. In the central city regions, Governor Xiahou is the hegemon. His authority is extremely great. If we don't pay tribute, he can make the Emperor Pavilion cease to exist. Unless the Emperor Pavilion moves to another city region. Mo Fei said. Then the popularity that we have worked so hard to accumulate today will probably be lost by a lot. Clearly, Xiahou is aware of this. Since Governor Xiahou is taking such good care of us, in that case, let's develop the Emperor Pavilion into a true first-tier power. Di Tian coldly spoke. Release the news that I will appear in the next auction. I recently forged a special divine weapon. Use my name to announce it. This news swiftly circulated around Lifefire City. Not only for the central city regions, even experts from the other 4 city regions also rushed here, preparing to participate in this auction. They wanted to see what treasures the most famous weaponsmithing grandmaster in recent years would have. The governor of a region, what boldness! A voice rang out. Di Tian walked over as his eyes gleamed with coldness. Little miss, you have never participated in the matters here before, hence you wouldn't be clear. The tributes are usually divided into 9 grades. Those peak powers are first-grade powers and they have to pay the highest amount of tributes. The second-grade powers are the second grade and so on and so forth. Right now, our Emperor Pavilion can barely be considered a third-grade power. However, the governor's manner said that since the Emperor Pavilion has a peak-stage immortal emperor like me and the Pavilion Lord is able to forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons, we should be classified as a first-grade power and be on the same level as those supreme auction houses, paying the highest amount of tributes. This is simply preposterous. In the past, when he first became famous, many people could find Grandmaster D to help him forge formations. But ever since Grandmaster D forged high-grade emperor-ranked weapons, it was extremely difficult to even meet with him. Even many major powers couldn't do so. After all, even the Mo clan, an aristocrat clan that specialized in formations, had their elders and clan leader's daughter working for the Emperor Pavilion. Grand Supervisor, what's wrong? The serving girl, Little Zhu, couldn't help but ask when she saw Mo Fei's face turning black. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying 100 times was. This meant that originally, the Emperor Pavilion only needed to pay 1% or less of their resources. Only then would this ratio be considered normal and both parties would be satisfied. In the central city regions of Lifefire City, a new power named the Emperor Pavilion appeared, and it was gradually growing stronger. However, the owner of the Emperor Pavilion, Di Tian, gradually faded out of everyone's sight, unlike when he first appeared. Good methods. Mo Fei praised. Mo Junyi's beautiful eyes also flashed with a bright light as she stared at the masked Di Tian. What was this fellow thinking? He was actually so powerful in this aspect as well. Is there no standard for the amount of tribute? Mo Junyi asked. It has been many years since we last met. Grandmaster D's radiance is even more radiant than before. Some old acquaintances of Di Tian stood up and greeted him. Di Tian nodded in acknowledgement and walked up the auction stage together with Mo Junyi. Di Tian glanced at the crowd and naturally saw the people from the Yin clan and Lu clan. He also saw the clan leader of the Mo clan, Mo Ting, personally coming here. The amount of tribute a first-tier power has to pay is 100 times that of third-tier powers. Almost half of our earnings from the auction are only sufficient to pay the governor's manor. Mo Fei spoke. After all, although their Emperor Pavilion's development was very good, their earnings still depended on the auctions of the Emperor-ranked weapons forged by Di Tian. Those stalls in the Emperor Pavilion were all private businesses. They didn't have any other channels to earn resources. The stalls in the Emperor Pavilion were all packed to the brim. Because there were too many people, the supply and demand would naturally be too great. Those who were doing business in the Emperor Pavilion all had smiles on their faces, feeling gratitude towards Grandmaster D. Grandmaster D had allowed the Emperor Pavilion to develop so well and didn't charge them any resources at all, providing the Emperor Pavilion to them for free. You. Beauty Xiao glanced sideways at Yin Qiu as she mocked. You are neither a man nor a woman. When the auction was about to begin, those who were here to trade their treasures all gathered up their treasures and headed to the auction location. The Grand Supervisor of the Emperor Pavilion, Mo Fei, appeared. He glanced at the crowd and thanked them. naturally welcoming everyone's support. Another tribute day arrived. The Emperor Pavilion was the same as many powers and had to pay tribute. The amount of resources they had to pay would be decided by the governor's manor, based on the size of the businesses they owned. Because this was the first time they were paying tribute, the Grand Supervisor Mo Fei personally led a group of people over. But when he returned, Mo Fei was clearly unhappy. Not only for the Lu clan, the Yen clan and Grandmaster Xianming also arrived. But this time around they were very low profile, blending into the crowd. Grandmaster Xianming even wrapped himself up in a cloak. After that, Mo Juni and Di Tian walked over together, resembling a pair of lovers. This caused Lu Feibai, who was in the crowd, to have an unnatural expression on his face. The people from the Lu clan have come again. The Emperor Pavilion. Grandmaster Di would personally appear in the next auction. In addition, the items he would be auctioning were the divine weapons he forged recently. After that, all the major powers in Lifefire City started to pay attention to this. You came out. Mo Fei bitterly smiled. There's no solution to it. Governor Xiahou is too domineering, we can only endure it. Usually speaking, the governor's manner wouldn't do things without principles. Clearly, he hates you for rejecting him. Also, developing the Emperor Pavilion caused him to feel extremely unhappy. You even know that I'm wearing a mask? Can you not be smitten? Yin Qiu rolled her eyes. As time flowed by, the Emperor Pavilion grew more and more prosperous. After a round of expansion, many people would involuntarily think of the Emperor Pavilion when they wanted to trade for treasures. Did the Pavilion Lord offend the governor's manor before? Mo Fei asked. No. It's just that back then Governor Xiahou personally came by to invite the vice-governor. The Pavilion Lord naturally rejected him. Little Zhu replied. The popularity of the Emperor Pavilion grew bit by bit as time flowed by. Right now, the Emperor Pavilion's transaction market was already extremely prosperous. If they were to relocate, the losses would be extremely great. Let's use this opportunity to make an announcement. Also, if we set up an auction house here, our profits will be halved compared to the other auction houses. Only by doing so would we have sufficient attractiveness to attract more people to send their treasures here to be auctioned. Other than this, I will set the auction date of my Emperor-ranked weapons as the auction date of high-grade treasures. Only the best treasures will be auctioned, letting the people of Lifefire City know that on this date of every month, our Emperor Pavilion will have good treasures. Di Tian spoke. Alright, the auction is starting. Let's see what good treasures he forged. Xiahou calmly spoke, interrupting the two of them. After that, their gazes all turned to the auction stage. Today, in the newly constructed auction house of the Emperor Pavilion, there was a sea of people. Experts were as common as the clouds and the spectator stands were already filled to the brim. Behind them, there were still countless silhouettes floating in the air, waiting to see what treasures Grandmaster D would take out. Although Grandmaster D rarely appeared in public and the number of people mentioning his name in Lifefire City decreased, this didn't mean that his fame had weakened. On the contrary, as time passed, Grandmaster D's fame grew greater and greater. He was no longer someone who rose up overnight. This was especially so since the treasures he forged would be auctioned off at the Emperor Pavilion every month. Although Grandmaster D had vanished, his treasures were still there. How could his fame not soar? Ditian nodded. His eyes flashed with coldness. How much would the first-tier powers lose from the tribute they pay? Chapter 1586. Mo Junyi was the golden daughter of the Mo clan, the daughter of the clan leader. Just like what Lin Ba said, if it wasn't for Ditian forging a high-grade divine weapon back then, she wouldn't have come to the Emperor Pavilion to host the auction. Mo Fei also wouldn't have come to the Emperor Pavilion to be the Grand Supervisor. Before this, Mo Junyi was somewhat unwilling, but now she gradually got used to it. Although it was somewhat indecent to show her face in public like this, she would always be able to cause a commotion every time Ditian auctioned a divine weapon. She still felt a sense of pride. After all, the divine weapons she auctioned would all fetch a sky-high price. At this moment, her beautiful eyes stared at Ditian beside her. Ditian took a step forward and smiled. In order to test the power of this weapon, I need a peak-stage immortal emperor to cooperate with me. I wonder if there's anyone willing to try? I'll do it. Before everyone could react, a beautiful figure directly soared up into the air. Everyone inclined their heads as their gazes instantly froze. They saw a pair of snow-white slender legs that were faintly discernible. Her long skirt had a slit at the thighs, exuding a hazy sense of beauty. Just looking at her back view was enough to cause the blood of those who saw her to throb. This was definitely a devilish figure. Grandmaster D, how about I cooperate with you? This figure who walked out was none other than Beauty Xiao. Upon seeing her appearance, Tian started. After that he nodded, sure. The crowd only saw Beauty Xiao flying up into the air. That alluring face of hers was reflected in everyone's eyes. Her breasts were extremely voluptuous, and one could even see a hint of snow-white skin. It's the southern governor, Beauty Xiao. Some people from the major powers recognized Beauty Xiao as their eyes flashed with a bright light. This Beauty Xiao's actions had always been strange and her personality was extremely eccentric. They didn't expect that she would actually appear in such a situation and even help Tian test out his weapon. Tian soared up into the air. Beauty Xiao was bathed in emperor light. She who was originally already extremely charming had a holy glow to her, exuding a unique charm. She smiled at Tian. Grandmaster D, where's the divine weapon? Tian waved his hands as a black-colored gate appeared. This was a gate of sealing. On this gate, countless divine inscriptions could be seen, transforming into incomparably complicated diagrams. Resplendent astral light cascaded down from the sky onto this gate of sealing, causing it to emit a terrifying sealing light as it trembled unceasingly in the air. You have to be careful. Beauty Xiao smiled charmingly. Emperor light flashed as a powerful law domain manifested. In an instant, the entire space was filled with Beauty Xiao's illusory figures. Each of her illusory figures exuded a seductive aura. Every frown and smile of hers was enough to mesmerize the hearts of the spectators. The spectators below were all dumbfounded, as they felt their consciousness gradually turning blurry. They were about to fall into a trance, unable to extricate themselves. In their eyes there was only Beauty Xiao. Tian waved his hands as beams of light blasted into the gate of sealing. The gate of sealing revolved frenziedly as beams of sealing light shot out. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, the illusory figures of Beauty Xiao were directly sealed within a sealing diagram, unable to move at all. When the gate of sealing swept through the air, the countless illusory figures were all sealed. Beauty Xiao's true body appeared. She stretched out a finger as resplendent multicolored light radiated forth, containing a fearsome destructive might within. That finger of hers manifested a myriad of illusory figures, capable of severing the void and destroying everything. It was simply unimaginable that someone as beautiful as her would actually be able to unleash such a terrifying attack. Illusory killing finger. Beauty Xiao is truly willing to use it. Lin Ba's eyes flashed, staring at the boundless finger light. But at this moment, the gate of sealing released boundless sealing light. Streams of sealing energy gushed out from the gate of sealing, colliding with the countless finger attacks, transforming into a terrifying sealing diagram. No matter how strong the attacks were, they were all intercepted and sealed away. So tyrannical? Beauty Xiao smiled. Her 10 jade-like fingers continued blasting out. The might of her illusory killing finger was boundless, directly slashing apart the sealing diagram. Finger light filled the sky, capable of annihilating everything as they shot towards Tian. It was like she wanted to see how strong this emperor-ranked weapon was. As she attacked, Beauty Xiao had a smile on her face, exuding her charm. The sealing gate revolved frenziedly as the light in the air grew even more resplendent, radiating boundless emperor light. This entire space seemed to be sealed as thousands of fingers of slaughter froze the void. The sealing gate radiated a blinding sealing light towards Beauty Xiao. Beauty Xiao's silhouette flashed, vanishing like a phantom. An instant later, she returned to her original position in the air. Her long dress fluttered in the wind, exuding an incomparable allure. What a powerful emperor-ranked weapon! Beauty Xiao's face lit up. After that, she slowly sat back down. The eyes of everyone here gleamed with sharpness. They naturally could sense how terrifying this gate of sealing was. It could seal all attacks, law domains, and even enemies. It was simply too powerful. Is there anyone else who wants to try? Tian asked. There's no need. Grandmaster D, what's the starting bid for this weapon? Someone asked. Haha. Such a treasure is simply rare. Grandmaster D's weaponsmithing abilities are even more powerful than before. In the crowd, Grandmaster Schwaming's expression turned heavy. Right now, even he himself wouldn't be able to forge a divine weapon like the one Dition created. I'll leave the auction to Emojuni. Dition laughed. He landed on the auction platform and placed the sealing gate beside Emojuni. Emojuni rolled her eyes at him. After that, she smiled at everyone. I believe everyone is already impatient, right? The starting bid for this weapon is 10,000 high-grade Emperor stones. If there are any other valuable treasures, you can directly convert them into Emperor stones. What a terrifying price. The hearts of everyone trembled, but this was also within their expectations. Such a tyrannical weapon could be used to fight against peak-stage immortal emperors. How powerful was Beauty Zhao's attack? Yet, it was actually blocked by this weapon. If this weapon was obtained by a peak-stage expert, it would undoubtedly be like adding wings to a tiger. However, even for peak-stage immortal emperors, there weren't many who could afford this price. 20,000 high-grade Emperor stones. Beauty Zhao smiled sweetly, directly doubling the price. Many people sighed in their hearts. They could only watch. Dition was very calm. He watched as the price continued to rise. Finally, this sealing gate was sold for a price of 53,000 high-grade Emperor stones, won by Beauty Zhao. This caused many people to sigh in admiration at her heroism. However, those who knew of her identity didn't find it strange. As the governor of the southern regions, Beauty Zhao was naturally extremely wealthy. After that, the grand supervisor of the Emperor Pavilion, Mo Fei, walked up the auction platform and officially announced that the Emperor Pavilion would be opening an auction house, setting this area as the auction ground for the Emperor Pavilion. This instantly caused a commotion. So it turned out that this was the true purpose of the Emperor Pavilion, an auction house in addition to a transaction ground. When the Emperor Pavilion flourishes to a sufficient extent, the Emperor Pavilion would definitely become a new major power. However, many powers had already guessed this and didn't find it strange. After everyone left, news of what happened in the Emperor Pavilion naturally circulated around. Dition and the sealing gate once again became the topic of discussion. For a period of time, the name of Grandmaster Dition was like the sun in the sky. Who would be able to forge such a terrifying emperor-ranked weapon at the initial stage of the immortal emperor realm? Everyone knew that Grandmaster D's future was simply unimaginable. Not long after the Emperor Pavilion's auction ended, the 5 governors of Lifire City collected the tributes and came to the Lifire Palace again. According to the usual routine, the Lifire Empyrean and Grand Governor Zhuge Xiong personally went to meet the 5 governors. Qin Wentian naturally came as well. The 5 governors handed over the tributes they collected. The 2 serving girls of the Lifire Empyrean returned 10% to them. After that, they transmitted their voices to the Lifire Empyrean. The Lifire Empyrean smiled at Qin Wentian as he asked, "Qin Wentian, what have you been busy with recently?" "I've been busy with cultivation recently," Qin Wentian replied. "Is the pressure too great in the northern city regions?" The Lifire Empyrean seemed to be very concerned. Qin Wentian shook his head. "This subordinate is ashamed. I've been the governor for over 20 years and have yet to have any accomplishments. Many people say that this subordinate doesn't dare to step out of the governor's manor. How would I dare to say that I'm under pressure?" "So you know about it?" Xiaoho coldly snorted. "I heard that the northern city regions are still the same as before. Many powers don't even want to pay tributes. You might as well close one eye to it. This governor is truly capable. Xiaoho, the Lifire Empyrean, has already promised Governor Qin 100 years ago. It has only been 20 years. I believe Governor Qin will naturally understand what he should do." Zhuge Xiong smiled as he stared at Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian lowered his head and didn't say anything. This northern governor who killed 3 vice-governors the moment he took over was now so low profile that it caused people's hair to stand on end. He had always been in closed-door seclusion and didn't care about external affairs. He didn't even care about the tributes and was like a puppet governor. Grand Governor is right. It's just that I can't stand the sight of some people. Xiaoho coldly glanced at Qin Wentian. Xiaoho, after all, Wentian has only been the governor for 20 years. He isn't like you who has long established your roots. I heard that a grandmaster by the name of Dition appeared in the region you are in. Regardless of formations or weaponsmithing, he is extremely extraordinary. In fact, this beauty even personally went to auction off an emperor-ranked weapon. Is there such a thing? The Livefire Empyrean smiled. The eyes of Qin Wentian, who had his head lowered, flashed with sharpness. But after that, it was as though nothing had happened as he quietly stood there. Did he attract the Livefire Empyrean's attention so quickly? Palace Lord, there's indeed such a thing. However, there might be some exaggerations. Xiahou replied. Is that so? The Livefire Empyrean laughed. Is there any way to recruit him? Palace Lord. This subordinate has long promised him the position of vice-governor, but he rejected it. Xiahou spoke. Xiahou, you should know that there are very few people who can forge weapons. Even our Livefire Palace lacks them. You should work hard and try again. You can hint to him that he has a position equal to the governor. If necessary, you can say that this seat is interested in him. The Livefire Empyrean smiled. Xiahou nodded. This subordinate understands. I will definitely do my best. Right? The Livefire Empyrean waved his hand. You guys can return first. Yes, Palace Lord. The 5 of them bowed and retreated. After that, they turned and departed. Chapter 1587. Since the Livefire Empyrean personally gave the order, Xiahou naturally had to do it. Although Xiahou was very unhappy with Dition's rejection, and didn't want to invite Dition again, so what if Dition was a grandmaster weaponsmith? It wouldn't affect his authority. If it wasn't for the Livefire Empyrean speaking, he wouldn't even bother with Dition. This time around, Xiahou didn't come personally. He ordered a vice-governor to come to the Emperor Pavilion. Mo Fei knew that Xiahou sent someone over, and immediately went to look for Dition. Dition naturally understood what was going on and coldly laughed in his heart. The Livefire Empyrean wanted Xiahou to invite him, and he sent a vice-governor to the governor's manor? Not long ago, the Livefire Empyrean had ruthlessly butchered him, classifying them as a third-tier power as a first-tier power. Now he even wanted him to pay a visit personally? Tell him I'm not free. Dition spoke to Mo Fei. However, Mo Fei furrowed his brows. Dition, do you want to smooth things over? After all, the central region of Livefire City is Xiahou's territory. No need. It's impossible for me to agree if he wants to invite me to join the governor's manor. Since I've already offended him before and will offend him again in the future, there's no need to give him face. Dition replied. As long as they didn't do anything that broke the rules and didn't take the initiative to antagonize the governor's manor, even if Xiahou was the governor, what could he do to them? Mo Fei fell silent for a moment before he nodded. All right then. After speaking, he went to report to the vice-governor. When the vice-governor left, his expression was extremely unsightly. This was already the second time he was rejected. Back then, Xiahou personally went to look for Dition but was rejected. This time around he didn't even manage to meet Dition. As expected, after becoming a grandmaster weaponsmith, Dition was truly different. Now that he was famous, he didn't even give any face to the governor. After returning to the governor's manor, Xiahou learned that let alone inviting Dition to his manor, he didn't even get to see Dition. He instantly shattered the table beside him and stood up. I want to see how much face he has. After speaking, Xiahou personally left the governor's manor and came to the Emperor Pavilion. Since the Livefire Empyrean had instructed him, he had to do it even if he didn't want to. Even if he didn't succeed in the end, at least he did his best. If not, it wouldn't be too good if the Livefire Empyrean knew that he didn't even place the Livefire Empyrean in his heart. Since Xiahou personally came, Dition also didn't wish to shed all pretense of cordiality with Xiahou. Hence, he invited Xiahou to take a seat in his residence and smiled. Governor Xiahou, your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Right now, Grandmaster D's name is renowned throughout Livefire City, but he's very busy. It's difficult for him to even meet with you. Xiahou hinted. I'm indeed very busy. This place of mine is small and has just started. Lord Governor also overestimates my Emperor Pavilion too much and designated it as a first-tier power. I have no choice but to work hard. Dition smiled. The two of them had hidden meanings in their words. Ditian laughed coldly in his heart. You came here to invite me, yet you still have such an arrogant expression on your face. Do you really think that everyone has to give you face? Not long ago you just slashed me with a knife. Could it be that you want me to lower my head and beg you? As expected, Ditian's words caused Xiahou to frown. A look of unhappiness flashed in his eyes as he spoke. Who asked Grandmaster D to be so famous? Who doesn't know about you? This time around I came here because I have good news to tell you. Oh, Ditian laughed. He already knew the answer, but he still continued. Lord Governor, please guide me. This time around I recommended you to the Lifefire Empyrean. After the Empyrean learned of your talent, he sent you here to be my assistant. If you join my governor's manor in the future, I will nurture you as a future governor. Such an opportunity is extremely rare. Xiahou stared at Ditian as he spoke, with an expression of, I'm doing this out of charity. That look on his face was as though Ditian wanted to kowtow 3 times and kowtow 9 times to thank him for his great kindness. Ditian started, staring at Xiahou in bewilderment. This arrogant grand governor could actually be so shameless? He was the one who recommended him to the Lifefire Empyrean? To be his assistant? Vice-governor? None of these were correct. It was the Lifefire Empyrean who personally asked him about it. Also, it was said that his position was equal to a governor. Why did it suddenly become a vice-governor? What a sinister Xiahou! Ditian silently mused. Was this considered him sending out an invitation on behalf of the Lifefire Empyrean? If he didn't agree in the future when Xiahou reported to the Lifefire Empyrean, he would definitely say that he, Xiahou, personally paid a visit to the Lifefire Empyrean, but he, Ditian, didn't know what was good for him and rejected the Lifefire Empyrean's kind intentions. Ditian could guess this even with his eyes closed. However, his expression didn't change as he smiled. Ditian is filled with gratitude for the Lifefire Empyrean's kind intentions. I also have to thank Governor Xiahou for your recommendation. However, I'm truly used to being free and carefree. I only wish to do something in the Emperor Pavilion. I hope that Lord Governor won't take offense. Everyone has their own ambitions. This governor naturally won't force you. I will naturally report this to the Lifefire Empyrean. Xiahou nodded. Since this is the case, I shall bid my farewell then. Governor Xiahou, take care. Ditian couldn't even be bothered to say any polite words. He directly stood up and sent Xiahou off. Xiahou smiled and walked out. After he exited the Emperor Pavilion, his expression instantly turned heavy as a cold light flashed in his eyes. It was extremely terrifying. He naturally could sense that Ditian didn't give him any face at all. Outside the Emperor Pavilion, a few passers-by noticed Xiahou's expression. During these few days, the Emperor Pavilion was very lively with people coming and going. Nobody would care about the passers-by and Xiahou didn't mind as well. After returning to the governor's manor, Xiahou naturally ordered his vice-governor to report this to the Lifefire Empyrean. Naturally, he modified his report. For example, he clearly expressed how much the Lifefire Empyrean valued him, but Ditian was filled with disdain. Several days later, several people came to the governor's manor to pay their respects to Governor Xiahou. Because these people had extraordinary statuses, Governor Xiahou personally received them. Within the Great Hall, Governor Xiahou sat on the main seat. Below him was the vice-governor's seat. As for those below him, there were a few people with extremely high cultivation bases. All of them were peak-stage immortal emperors. Clearly, these people who came to pay a visit today had extraordinary statuses. Yan Feng was actually among the crowd. Not only that, Yan Feng was seated below an old man. This indicated that his status in the Yan clan was even lower than that old man. So it turned out that this old man was none other than the Yan clan leader. As for the other 2 clans, their statuses weren't inferior to the Yan clan leader at all. They came from the 2 first-tier powers in the central city regions of Lifefire City. They were the leaders of the 2 aristocrat clans. Also, they all had the same power behind them, an auction house and a transaction ground. Right now, the Emperor Pavilion was gradually threatening their status. The territory of the central city regions was fixed. There wouldn't be too many changes no matter how many experts there were. Once the Emperor Pavilion rose up, the central city regions would become more prosperous and the number of people on their side would decrease by a lot. In the future, if everyone went to the Emperor Pavilion for their auctions, it would naturally cause a huge impact to them. Hence, they came to the governor's manor and even brought the Yen clan along. After all, everyone knew that the Yen clan had a grudge with Tian. The two aristocrat clans were respectively the Han clan and Wei clan. Both of them were extremely ancient aristocrat clans that had developed for many years in Lifire City. If not, they wouldn't have been able to expand their auction houses to such a large scale. In the ancient hall, a group of people were chatting casually, but they didn't get to the main topic. It was only until the two clan leaders glanced at the Yen clan leader did he speak. "Lord Governor, what do you think of the Emperor Pavilion?" Xiahou smiled at the Yen clan leader. "What are you referring to?" "This Grandmaster D is extremely arrogant and despotic. Back then, before he became famous, he already joined my Yen clan and killed 2 experts from my clan. He simply has no regard for anyone. He didn't even place the rules of the governor's manor in his eyes. Now, after he became famous, he grew even more arrogant. No one can be placed in his heart." The Yen clan leader coldly spoke, using righteous words to implicate the governor's manor. Back then, Tian and the Yen clan had a fair battle. What did this have to do with the governor's manor? However, no one would expose him. Who among the people here wasn't scheming and far-sighted? That's right. Lord Governor, the Emperor Pavilion opened a transaction pavilion in this region before opening an auction house. In fact, they didn't even inform us beforehand, completely disregarding us seniors. Seniors, didn't you all see how Tian humiliated Grandmaster Xianming? Right now, Grandmaster Xianming doesn't even have the face to show his face. A group of people spoke one after another, all of them filled with righteous indignation. They finally got to the main topic. This Tian truly has his own methods. The development of a power depends on one's own methods. Come, let's drink. Governor Xiahou laughed. The people from the other clans all silently cursed at this old fox. His words were equivalent to not saying anything at all. They had already investigated and knew that this Xiahou personally went to the Emperor Pavilion, and when he came out, his expression was ashen. Right now, they came here because they wanted Xiahou to promise them that if they acted against the Emperor Pavilion, the governor's manor would close one eye to it. Naturally, they wouldn't say such words out loud. It was fine as long as everyone knew about it in their hearts. Just a hint and everyone would understand. However, Xiahou didn't say anything and didn't express his stance. No matter what they said, Xiahou acted as though he didn't hear it and continued to urge them to drink. "Lord Governor, a few days ago my auction house sold a small item. It doesn't have much value, but it's extremely interesting. Please kindly accept it." The clan leader of the Han clan took out an interspatial ring. Xiahou received it and sent his immortal sense into the ring. After that, he smiled. "It's truly an interesting item." The vice-governor at the side cursed silently in his heart. Continue acting. However, they naturally wouldn't say anything. Such things were very common. Even if the palace lord knew about it, he wouldn't say anything. The other 2 clans also offered their gifts and Governor Xiahou accepted them. The banquet was very joyous and finally ended. Xiahou ordered the vice-governor to personally send the clans off. Before leaving, the vice-governor smiled. "Clan leaders, please take care." The clan leaders nodded, but they felt somewhat unhappy. They had already paid a visit and sent gifts, but they didn't receive any response. "Clan leaders, are you all unhappy? You guys don't know how impressive this Grandmaster D is." Back then, when Lord Governor went to the Lifire Palace to pay tribute, the palace lord personally said that he wanted to recruit Grandmaster D. However, Grandmaster D didn't seem to have any interest in him at all. It said that the palace lord was very unhappy. Tell me, given how impressive Grandmaster D is, how would he give face to the clan leaders? The vice-governor had a deep smile on his face. The eyes of the clan leaders gleamed with sharpness. Rejected the palace lord? The palace lord was very unhappy? So this is the case. Grandmaster D is truly impressive. The Han clan leader had a smile on his face. Impressive, no wonder. The Wei clan leader also smiled. The few of them exchanged glances and smiled. After that, all of them left in satisfaction, having obtained the answer they wanted. With just a single sentence they understood. Chapter 1588. the Emperor Pavilion's auction house was gradually on the right track. Many experts came here because of its fame, willing to hand their treasures over to the Emperor Pavilion for auction. Although they didn't have too many good treasures, they were still gradually gaining popularity. In addition, the Emperor Pavilion's transaction market itself was able to attract more people to the auction house. In addition, every month, Grandmaster Dition would take out an Emperor-ranked weapon he personally forged to be auctioned. The crowd discovered that the treasures auctioned today were all extremely rare and extraordinary. This continued for several months and everyone came to a conclusion. Every month, when the Emperor-ranked weapons created by Grandmaster Dition were being auctioned, there would be extremely valuable treasures appearing. Hence, the Emperor Pavilion would always be exceptionally lively on this day. Although there weren't many people during normal days, Mo wasn't worried. As long as this continued, he believed that the Emperor Pavilion's auction house would only get better and better. In addition, the transaction market was also expanding, more and more people were willing to come here to trade. Everything was progressing in a good direction. He and Emojuni would stay in the Emperor Pavilion for 100 years. He believed that within this 100 years, the Emperor Pavilion would definitely become a major power in Lifefire City that couldn't be underestimated. Today, it was another auction day for the Emperor-ranked weapon forged by Dition. It was a mid-grade Emperor-ranked weapon, a stone tablet. This stone tablet was made from a miraculous material and was inscribed with terrifying runes. Once it unleashed its power, it would be able to directly seal and kill enemies. Right now, everyone in Lifefire City knew that Grandmaster D's weaponsmithing abilities were getting stronger and stronger. He could create many types of divine weapons and was an all-round genius. It was just that no one knew how long Grandmaster D had cultivated for and what his appearance was like. Up until now, no one had ever seen Dition's true appearance before. Even Emojuni and his serving girl Little Zhu had never seen Dition's true appearance before. After the auction ended, everyone felt that it wasn't enough and they all left. After the auction ended, Mo and Emojuni heaved a sigh of relief. Mo smiled. It's time for the Emperor Pavilion to continue expanding. With our current manpower, we might not be able to make ends meet. Given our current development momentum, I believe there would be more people willing to join us. Emojuni nodded lightly. Miss, it has been tough on you. Mo glanced at Emojuni. I'm doing fine. Emojuni casually smiled. Mo cast a deep glance at her and smiled. Sadly, this Grandmaster D is truly a rock. Grand Supervisor. At this moment, a figure hurriedly walked over. It was none other than the immortal emperor that the Emperor Pavilion recruited. What's the matter? Mo couldn't help but ask when he saw how flustered the other party was. There's a problem. After the treasure forged by the Pavilion Lord was auctioned off, it was intercepted by someone on the way. Not only that, all the people who obtained treasures from the auction were robbed at the same time. That immortal emperor spoke. Mo instantly sat up from his chair as his heart turned cold. As an elder of the Mo clan, Mo had a peak-stage immortal emperor cultivation base and had experienced many things before. He instantly felt that something was amiss. His eyes gleamed with a terrifying coldness as he clenched his fists. Someone is targeting my Emperor Pavilion. Grand Supervisor, you mean to say that they aren't here for the treasures but for our Emperor Pavilion? That immortal emperor also had his suspicions. Such ruthlessness, capturing all the treasures in one fell swoop. This isn't something an ordinary power can accomplish. One must know that the people who won the auction are all extremely powerful, especially the immortal emperors who obtained the treasure forged by the Pavilion Lord. All of them were robbed at the same time and were even injured. Clearly, this has been planned for a very long time. Naturally, they are targeting our Emperor Pavilion. Mo eyes were extremely cold. After this news circulates out, I'm afraid many people would be suspicious. All the treasures auctioned by my Emperor Pavilion were stolen. Although no one would be foolish enough to suspect us of this, in the future, no one would dare to come to my Emperor Pavilion for auction. Pulling the firewood from under the cauldron, that immortal emperor understood when he heard this. Most probably, the guess of the Grand Supervisor was right. I've long been thinking that since the Emperor Pavilion's development is so good, why would those major powers sit by and watch? Now they finally came. Not only that, the moment they acted, they were so ruthless, wanting to sever our path of retreat. Mo Fei's eyes flashed with coldness. Mo Junyi asked, "Who do you suspect?" "Our Emperor Pavilion blocked someone's path. Naturally, it must be one of them." Mo Fei spoke. "Also, only those major powers would have such a grand plan. Immediately head to the governor's manor and report this matter. Let the governor's manor investigate this matter. We have to get to the bottom of this." Mo Fei spoke to the immortal emperor in front of him. That immortal emperor nodded and turned about, speeding towards the governor's manor. After he left, Mo Fei's brows were still tightly furrowed. "Miss, I'm a little worried," Mo Fei mumbled. Mo Junyi glanced at him and asked, "Worried about what?" "I'm worried that the governor's manor might have tacitly agreed to this." Mo Fei glanced at Mo Junyi, his words causing Mo Junyi's expression to change. "The governor's manor is responsible for guarding a region. That shouldn't be the case, right? You don't know this, Ditian has offended Xiahou before. Although there's nothing we can do about it, Xiahou is arrogant and tyrannical. It's very possible that he would harbor hatred in his heart. If those major powers continue to sow discord between us, there's a high possibility that Xiahou would tacitly agree to their actions. If that's the case, the momentum that our Emperor Pavilion built up after so much effort would be directly crushed." One couldn't help but say that Mo Fei's guess was basically correct. "Since this is the case, we can only wait and see." Mo Junyi spoke. We can only wait and see the governor's manor's attitude." Mo Fei nodded lightly. Ditian soon learned of this news and his mood was extremely unsightly. Just like what Mo Fei had guessed, the other party had planned this meticulously, and they basically couldn't find any clues. Also, the governor's manor sent a message saying that they were currently investigating this matter, but there were no results for now. In the great hall of the Emperor Pavilion, Ditian sat there. Mo Fei, Mo Junyi and the others were all present. "How's the Heaven Emperor Pavilion's auction house?" Ditian asked. "The number of people has decreased." Mo Fei replied. "What about the governor's manor? Did the spies send back any news?" Everything is as usual in the governor's manor. No one captured anyone for questioning and there are only a few spies sent out to investigate." Mo Fei replied. Ditian fell silent. His fingers drummed on the armrest of the chair beside him as he slowly closed his eyes. "Does everyone have any good plans?" Ditian asked. No one replied. After a long time Mo Fei spoke. "If the governor's manor pretended to be deaf and mute, leaving aside the fact that we wouldn't be able to find out anything, even if we did, it would be useless. The power of the other party is much greater than us. Let's leave it at that for now." Ditian stood up and directly left the great hall. Mo Fei sighed silently in his heart. In the supreme ancient immortal realms such things were very common. The other party didn't even need to clash head-on with you, and they would be able to make you die without a burial ground, causing your many years of hard work to vanish in an instant. The Emperor Pavilion continued its business as usual. After that, a few more incidents occurred. The people who came to the Emperor Pavilion to trade were all plotted against. In truth, Mo Fei had already sent people to monitor the situation, but there were too many people who came to the Emperor Pavilion to trade. Could it be that they could protect everyone? Clearly, this wasn't realistic. Gradually, some unfavorable rumors about the Emperor Pavilion appeared in Lifire City. The Emperor Pavilion had courted trouble. Regardless if one went to the Emperor Pavilion to trade or auction, it was best to be more careful. Such news was extremely destructive to the Emperor Pavilion, causing the number of people coming to the Emperor Pavilion to dwindle. Once again, a divine weapon personally forged by Ditian was robbed after it was auctioned. The Emperor Pavilion was instantly plunged into a storm. If this continued on, even if they knew that Grandmaster D's divine weapon was very powerful, no one would dare to auction it off. The number of people in the Emperor Pavilion grew fewer and fewer. If this continued on, the Emperor Pavilion would surely be destroyed. Today Ditian walked out of the Emperor Pavilion. Even Xiaozhu and Mo Fei had no idea where he went. In the southern regions of Lifire City, the governor's manor. Today a special guest came to pay a visit. This person was very famous and many people in Lifire City had heard of his name before. In fact, the southern governor even auctioned off a divine weapon forged by him. Hence, Beauty Xiao naturally personally received this guest. In an elegant and fragrant courtyard, the environment was extremely pleasant. Beauty Xiao was dressed even more boldly in her own home. She wore a dress that was as thin as muslin, revealing her devilish figure. Half of her snow-white skin was exposed to the air, causing people to feel like committing a crime. "Grandmaster D, why are you so free to come and visit me?" Beauty Xiao smiled charmingly. The two of them sat by the lake with delicacies and wine in the middle. The serving girls were all sent away by Beauty Xiao. The pavilion by the lake, the fake mountains and peach blossoms, the beauty sitting cross-legged. This scene was extremely alluring. This was especially so when Beauty Xiao's mesmerizing eyes stared at him. Ditian felt somewhat distracted, but he still controlled himself very well. He then spoke. "Recently, I encountered a troublesome matter and wanted to seek Governor Zhao's guidance." "Oh," Beauty Xiao smiled. "Grandmaster D, you can just address me as Beauty. I wonder what's the matter?" Wanting people to address her as Beauty, this Beauty Xiao was truly narcissistic enough. "A few days ago, Governor Xiahou came to my Emperor Pavilion and told me a piece of news. He said that he recommended me to the Livefire Empyrean. Hence, the Livefire Empyrean asked me a few questions and ordered me to become a subordinate of Governor Xiahou, immediately closing the Emperor Pavilion. In the future, I can only forge weapons for the governor's manor and I have to offer them to the Livefire Palace." Ditian slowly spoke. "How can I agree to such a condition? The Emperor Pavilion was developed by me, and I'm used to freedom. Hence, I risked offending the Livefire Empyrean and rejected Governor Xiahou's request." Beauty Zhao's expression didn't change as she smiled at Ditian. This caused Ditian to silently curse that this Beauty Xiao wasn't an ordinary character, and was extremely shrewd. There was actually no change in her expression at all. Governor Xiahou immediately spoke ruthlessly, telling me that if I don't obey the Livefire Empyrean's orders, the Emperor Pavilion will close its doors. I was speechless. I thought that the Livefire Empyrean wouldn't bother with a minor character like me. However, recently my Emperor Pavilion suffered a destructive blow. Those who went to the Emperor Pavilion to auction off my divine weapons would all suffer a calamity, a few times in a row. Also, those who went to the Emperor Pavilion to trade with me also encountered all sorts of trouble. The governor's manor completely pretended to not know anything. My Emperor Pavilion is a first-tier power, and we pay the most tributes, yet we are treated like this. I feel a chill in my heart. Chapter 1589. Back then when Xiahou went to the Emperor Pavilion, although he was somewhat arrogant and wanted him to become a vice-governor, he didn't go overboard to the point where he wanted him to close the Emperor Pavilion. In the future, he could only forge weapons for the Livefire Empyrean. In addition, he claimed that this was an order Xiahou received from the Livefire Empyrean, directly pulling the Livefire Empyrean in as well. However, Ditian didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. Xiahou originally made a false order, and even lied that he was the one who recommended the Livefire Empyrean. After that, the governor's manor even wanted to kill his Emperor Pavilion. Ditian didn't need to think to know that Xiahou's words would be completely different from what he said. Most probably, he, Ditian, would have to bear the crime of disrespecting the Livefire Empyrean. Since this was the case, he naturally had to drag the Livefire Empyrean into this. After all, his purpose for coming here was to pass this message to the Livefire Empyrean through Beauty Xiao. If not, what was his purpose for coming here? If the Livefire Empyrean only knew that Xiahou wanted to deal with him, just because he didn't agree to join the governor's manor, the Livefire Empyrean would turn a blind eye to this matter and couldn't be bothered with his Emperor Pavilion. But if the Livefire Empyrean knew that he had taken the blame for Xiahou, and that Xiahou had been pretending to obey him, Xiahou would surely be unhappy. As for whether the Livefire Empyrean would believe it or not, even if the Livefire Empyrean didn't believe it, he would definitely be suspicious. After all, as long as he inquired about it, he would know that something happened to his Emperor Pavilion. Beauty Xiao smiled as she stared at Ditian. And then, Ditian stared at this extremely alluring vixen as he sighed. If this is the case, I can only leave and head to the other main cities of the 9 world palaces. You want me to pass the message for you? Beauty Xiao smiled at Ditian. instantly understanding his intentions. In truth, Ditian wanted her to understand. He then took out an interspatial ring and passed it to Beauty Xiao. Beauty, this is the Emperor Stone you obtained from the auction for my weapon. How would I really want it? Beauty, please take it back. Beauty Xiao didn't accept it. If she accepted it, it would mean that she agreed to help Ditian. I just want to see your face. Beauty Xiao continued to reveal a seductive smile. Due to some special reasons, it's not convenient for me to show my true face. Ditian shook his head. These monarch stones are not enough for you to remove your mask? Beauty Xiao was still smiling, feeling more and more curious. An initial stage immortal emperor, a grandmaster in formations, a peak stage weaponsmith, the founder of the Emperor Pavilion, and now, he was preparing to fight against Xia Ho. She really wanted to see what was hidden beneath that mask. Ditian shook his head and looked at Beauty Xiao. However, the more he acted like this, the more curious Beauty Xiao felt. She smiled. Since this is the case, Grandmaster D, please return. Ditian smiled and nodded. After that, he spoke, Governor Xiao, sorry for the disturbance. After we bid farewell today, I'm afraid it would be hard for us to meet again in the future. Let us meet again in the future. As he spoke, he prepared to get up. You would rather give up the Emperor Pavilion that is developing so well than to let me see your face? Who exactly are you? Beauty Xiao asked. Even if I have to start all over again, given my proficiency in formations and weaponsmithing, it shouldn't be too difficult for me to rise up in the other 9 world palaces. Right now, my cultivation base is still a little weak. Once I break through to the mid-stage of the Immortal Emperor realm, regardless of combat prowess or weaponsmithing abilities, they would all grow stronger. At that time, even if I encounter a governor like Xia Ho again, I wouldn't need to care about him. Ditian calmly spoke. The humility and politeness he exuded instantly vanished without a trace. Right now, only the pride and arrogance of a grandmaster in formations and weaponsmithing remained. Maybe this was his true self. Beauty Xiao's eyes flashed with a bright light as she stared at Ditian. Such a Ditian was more interesting. She liked it. Only to see Beauty Xiao standing up, walking over to Ditian's side and sitting down. She who was only wearing a thin dress with straps, her alluring figure actually directly laid down on Ditian's thighs. That alluring figure was just inches away from him, causing Ditian's heart to tremble as his countenance fluctuated. This female vixen. As long as he was willing, he would be able to touch places he shouldn't touch. Upon seeing the change in Ditian's eyes, Beauty Xiao giggled. Her beauty was so alluring that it was as though tears were dripping from her eyes. Do you want to accept me? In that case, I'll be yours and will definitely pass on your message. Beauty Xiao's enticing voice rang out. Ditian's eyes flashed with a smile. He stretched out his hands and touched that supple skin. His hands roamed around as he smiled. Beauty, you have the status of a governor. Initially, I wouldn't dare to be disrespectful to you. However, if you continue to tempt me like this, as long as I'm an ordinary person, I would definitely not be able to control myself and eat you up. It's just that I have to say this first, I have a family. Even if I eat you up, I won't be responsible for it. Don't kill me. A strange light flashed in Beauty Xiao's eyes. She smiled. That's fine too. If you are born handsome, I won't be at a disadvantage. Let me take a look at your face. If it's good, I'll give in to you. Ditian's palms were still roaming around. That soft and supple skin felt extremely wondrous to the touch. In fact, his hands even started moving towards places he shouldn't be touching. However, he only saw Beauty Xiao smiling as she placed her hand on the bottom of the mountain, blocking Ditian's advance. You haven't let me see yet. Beauty Xiao's other hand stretched out, wanting to remove Ditian's mask. However, just when her hand was about to touch his face, Ditian grabbed her hand and shook his head with a smile. This won't do. I can't endure it anymore. Let's do what we need to do first. As he spoke, the other hand from the bottom of the mountain continued to invade, slowly climbing up, causing Beauty Xiao to let out a soft moan. Her countenance turned even more beautiful, yet she still tightly grabbed onto his hand. After that, her body slid out from Ditian's embrace like a water snake, returning to her seat. She stared at him. You are truly audacious. You don't even want to let me see your face and you already want to take my body? Governor, you should know how strong your allure is. If it wasn't for the fact that my state of heart is extraordinary, I wouldn't have been able to endure it. Ditian calmly smiled. I'll leave the emperor-ranked stone behind. Regardless of whether you help me or not, that emperor-ranked weapon will still be given to you by me. Just treat it as me taking advantage of you earlier. After I return, I will temporarily close the Emperor Pavilion. If the matter isn't resolved within 3 months, I can only leave Lifefire City. Farewell. As he spoke, Ditian stood up, turned around and walked out. Beauty Xiao smiled as she stared at the departing back of Ditian. After that, she stood up and walked to the lakeside, staring at her extremely alluring figure. She stroked her long hair as she mumbled, "Is my body so weak that it doesn't have any allure? I can't even remove a mask." She naturally knew that before this, Ditian wanted to advance in order to retreat, intentionally trying to probe her bottom line. She was thinking that if she didn't stop him earlier, would Ditian still dare to take her? She placed her hands on the straps on her shoulders and pulled them apart. Her thin dress slid down, revealing her devilish figure that could cause the blood of men to boil. After that, she slowly stepped into the lake. The scene was too beautiful. Just like what Ditian said to Beauty Xiao after he returned, the Emperor Pavilion would be temporarily closed. He also posted a notice to inform Lifefire City. Recently, the Emperor Pavilion was plotted against by a major power. Also, the governor's manor couldn't find any information. In order to protect the interests of those who came to the Emperor Pavilion for an auction, the Emperor Pavilion decided to temporarily close for 3 months. If the governor's manor still couldn't find the mastermind within 3 months, the Emperor Pavilion would be closed forever and would be relocated. If the governor's manor could find the mastermind, the Emperor Pavilion would reopen 3 months later and hold a grand auction. At that time, Grandmaster Ditian would take out 3 Emperor-ranked weapons for auction. Finally, the Emperor Pavilion stated that although they were classified as a first-tier power, their strength was actually a little weak. They hoped that the governor's manor would do their best to capture the mastermind on account of the first-tier taxes they paid. This notice didn't seem to contain any anger, but it caused many people to feel shocked in their hearts. The Emperor Pavilion was truly cutting off all means of retreat. There were so many hidden messages in the notice. There wasn't a single sentence that blamed the governor's manor, but the spearhead was all pointed at the governor's manor. For example, they were classified as a first-tier power and had to pay first-tier taxes. Also, the governor's manor couldn't find any information after so many major incidents happened, and they hoped that the governor's manor would do their best. However, the notice was extremely tactful. There wasn't a single sentence that offended or blamed the governor's manor. The governor's manor also couldn't say anything. Right now, how could the people of Lifefire City not be able to tell that the governor's manor had participated in this matter as well, acting against the major powers in their own regions, forcing the Emperor Pavilion to leave? This was simply too shameless. After collecting first-tier taxes, they still did such a thing. For a period of time, many voices of cursing towards the governor's manor appeared in Lifefire City. This was especially so for those powers who had a good impression of the Emperor Pavilion, as well as those who had cooperated with Ditian. All of them intentionally released this news. The Mo clan even used some of their power to add fuel to the flames, causing this matter to blow up even more. A notice that didn't target the governor's manor instantly circulated through Lifefire City, becoming a scandal about the shady dealings of the governor's manor. As the commotion grew, many people silently praised the methods of the Emperor Pavilion. They actually took a step back in order to advance. If the Emperor Pavilion didn't temporarily close down, it would only cause more and more panic in the hearts of the people. But now, after this notice was released, countless people were paying attention to the Emperor Pavilion. If they couldn't endure this, the Emperor Pavilion would leave and the governor's manor would still be cursed. But if they could endure this, given the amount of attention this time around, the popularity of the Emperor Pavilion might instantly recover to its peak on the day they reopened. In the governor's manor, Xiaoho was enraged. Killing intent radiated from him. He wanted nothing more than to order his men to trample the Emperor Pavilion to the ground. However, from the start to the end, the Emperor Pavilion didn't say a single word of cursing at the governor's manor. Even if he wanted to accuse the Emperor Pavilion of a crime, he couldn't do so. In addition, He had indeed collected first-tier taxes from the Emperor Pavilion. He could only accept it. Dition, Palace Lord, you even dared to reject us and still want to retaliate? I'll wait for you to scram 3 months later. This was the anger of Xiahou. Chapter 1590. The news of the Emperor Pavilion spread like wildfire. Many people were discussing in private. Although the governor's manner was extremely powerful, they couldn't control the mouths of others. Could it be that the governor's manner could stop people from speaking? But even so, the governor's manner still didn't do anything. They did things their own way and basically didn't seriously investigate the matter of the Emperor Pavilion being targeted. This was because there was no way to investigate this matter. Commander Xiahou already knew who did it. Furthermore, the other party had received a hint from him. How could they investigate? Could it be that he was the one being investigated? Naturally, Xiahou could also find a scapegoat to give the Emperor Pavilion an explanation, allowing the Emperor Pavilion to reopen. This way, the curses would lessen and in the future, those people wouldn't dare to jump out to deal with the Emperor Pavilion. If not, wouldn't Xiahou lose all his face? But even so, Xiahou wasn't willing. The arrogant him wanted the Emperor Pavilion to scram. In fact, he even wanted Dition's life. An initial stage immortal emperor, no matter how strong his formations and weaponsmithing abilities were, so what of it? As long as he wasn't strong enough, he could leave the governor's manor and there would be ways to kill him. At that time, the other major powers would definitely be able to use him, and they would naturally act to deal with him. Time flowed by day after day. Many people were silently thinking that this time around, the Emperor Pavilion was truly finished. The governor's manor was determined to kill them. Seems like Grandmaster D must have offended Governor Xiahou. If not, such a thing wouldn't have happened. 2 months later, although the Emperor Pavilion closed its trading and auction market, it wouldn't truly close its doors. At this moment, a female immortal emperor came to the Emperor Pavilion to pay her respects. Emojuni received her. This female immortal emperor had an extraordinary demeanor. Her eyes were spirited and she exuded the aura of a ruler. She then asked, "Is Grandmaster D not around?" Recently, the pavilion master has been worrying about the matters of the Emperor Pavilion and is currently in seclusion contemplating. Emojuni smiled and replied, "I wish to invite Grandmaster D to forge a divine weapon for me. Can you recommend me?" The female immortal emperor spoke to Emojuni. Emojuni hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'll go and inform the pavilion master and see if he's busy." "All right." The female immortal emperor nodded. After that, Emojuni left. After Dition received the news, his immortal sense permeated the area. After that, his eyes flashed with a strange light as he smiled at Emojuni. "Invite her to my place." Emojuni initially thought that Dition would reject. A look of bewilderment appeared on her face, but she still nodded her head. An instant later, she brought that female immortal emperor to the courtyard where Dition stayed. "Grandmaster D." The female immortal emperor nodded her head slightly when she saw Dition. She didn't show any signs of respect and merely calmly greeted him. "I heard that you want to forge a weapon. I wonder what grade of weapon you want to forge?" Dition asked. "Grandmaster D is proficient in ceiling-type emperor-ranked weapons. In that case, I will choose a mid-grade emperor-ranked weapon. I'm fine with anything else." The female immortal emperor replied, "I have a few mid-grade emperor-ranked weapons here. You can choose one yourself." Dition waved his hand and took out a few well-forged weapons. The eyes of the female immortal emperor flashed as she stared at the row of weapons. She silently mused that the rumors weren't false after all. This Dition's weaponsmithing abilities simply surpassed her imagination. Forging weapons seemed to be very simple for him, able to forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons every month. It was like as long as he willed it, he would be able to forge many divine weapons. The female immortal emperor chose a sword-shaped weapon and asked, "What's the price of this weapon?" 500 high-grade emperor stones. Dition replied, "As expected of Grandmaster D. Your mid-grade emperor-ranked weapons are all priced at high-grade emperor stones." "Awesome." The female immortal emperor laughed. With a wave of her hand, she took out 500 high-grade emperor stones and passed them to Dition. Dition bitterly smiled and shook his head. The Emperor Pavilion is going to close soon. In the future, I can only rely on forging divine weapons to exchange for cultivation resources. Speaking of which, I'm really curious. Right now, the commotion in Lifefire City is already spreading like wildfire. Grandmaster D, how did you offend Governor Xiaohou exactly? Is there really no way to turn things around? The female immortal emperor laughed. If I had the slightest chance to turn things around, I wouldn't have temporarily closed the Emperor Pavilion. In truth, the Emperor Pavilion is truly finished now. Diton bitterly smiled as he shook his head. I didn't merely offend Governor Xiaohou. What do you mean by that? The female immortal emperor asked. Forget it, it's fine if you don't want to say it. Don't invite trouble. Dition waved his hands. Grandmaster D, I'm really curious. I hope that Grandmaster D can tell me. I guarantee that I won't leak this out. The female immortal emperor spoke. Since I'm about to leave, there's no harm in telling you. The person I offended is the Lifefire Empyrean. How would I still have any chance? Dition's eyes flickered with loneliness. The Lifefire Empyrean has always been staying in the Lifefire Palace. It's very rare for outsiders to come into contact with him. Grandmaster D, how did you offend the Lifefire Empyrean? The female immortal emperor grew even more curious as she continued to ask. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. The Lifefire Empyrean felt that since I'm proficient in weaponsmithing, I should be used by him. Hence, he sent Governor Xiaohou here to threaten me, wanting me to join the governor's manor and become a weaponsmith under him. In the future, I'll specialize in weaponsmithing for Governor Xiaohou and the Lifefire Empyrean. If I refuse, my Emperor Pavilion can forget about continuing to operate here. Although I am untalented, I have my own pride. How can I be threatened? I rejected Governor Xiaohou and offended the Lifefire Empyrean. Hence, you can see the consequences. Diton sighed, feeling even more desolate. What sort of character is the Lifefire Empyrean? Although you are a weaponsmithing grandmaster, do you think he would bother with you? Maybe Grandmaster D has misunderstood. The female immortal emperor frowned. A hint of arrogance could be seen in the center of her brows, adding to her beauty. Dition stared at her appearance, silently musing that as expected of the Lifefire Empyrean's personal attendant. Her demeanor was extraordinary and the Lifefire Empyrean's judgment wasn't bad. He was actually able to groom such a beautiful immortal emperor. So it turned out that this female was none other than one of the two serving girls by the Lifefire Empyrean's side. Qin Wentian had seen her many times before. How could he not recognize her? Naturally, he still pretended that he didn't know. He sighed. I initially thought so as well, thinking that given the Lifefire Empyrean's character, he wouldn't bother with a minor character like me. But you have also seen the truth. If it wasn't for the Lifefire Empyrean's instructions, how would Governor Xiaohou dare to be so audacious, disregarding such a scandal and wanting to kill me? I have no grudge with Governor Xiaohou. The human heart is unfathomable. Dition still doesn't know what will happen in the future. It's best for you not to make wild guesses and slander the Lifefire Empyrean. The female immortal emperor exuded a faint arrogance. Dition's eyes flashed as he stared at her. Who are you exactly? Grandmaster D, you're on your own now. Farewell. The female immortal emperor turned and directly soared into the air, departing the area. Emojuni's beautiful eyes flashed, feeling somewhat unhappy with her attitude. She wanted to say something but Dition sent a voice transmission to stop her, causing her to feel extremely puzzled. This female immortal emperor is so arrogant. Emojuni calmly spoke. How can the Lifefire Empyrean's woman not be arrogant? Dition laughed. Emojuni's beautiful eyes instantly froze as she stared at Dition in astonishment. It was actually the Lifefire Empyrean's woman who paid a visit in secret. Purchasing the divine weapon was merely something she did in passing. As for Dition, he intentionally said those words to her. However, Emojuni was even more curious. This female immortal emperor was the Lifefire Empyrean's woman, yet she came out to handle some matters. Clearly, she wasn't the main wife and would rarely leave the Lifefire Empyrean's side. There shouldn't be many people who knew of her, or she wouldn't have come here so openly. How did Dition get to know her? Emojuni was also somewhat curious about Dition's true identity. After the Lifefire Empyrean's serving girl left the Emperor Pavilion, She directly sped towards the governor's manor. Governor Xiahou naturally personally came to welcome her. He asked with some bewilderment, "Fairy Purple Moon, why are you so free to come to the governor's manor? Why, can't I come?" The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor's eyes flashed with coldness as she spoke to Xiahou. "That's not my intention. It's just that Fairy Purple Moon often follows the Livefire Empyrean by his side. Hence I feel a little puzzled." Xiahou shook his head. "Quickly invite her in." Although he, Xiahou, was a governor, what sort of character was the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor? She was the Livefire Empyrean's woman. As a subordinate of Xiahou, although his authority was great, how could he dare to be disrespectful to the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor? Wouldn't that be smacking the Livefire Empyrean's face? "No need, I'll leave after asking a few questions." The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor's expression was calm. "Are you the one who interfered in the matters of the Emperor Pavilion?" Xiahou's eyes flashed. He didn't understand what the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor meant by this. Why would such a matter alarm the Livefire Empyrean? Xiahou is fearful. "Does the Livefire Empyrean have any instructions for me?" Xiahou asked. "The Livefire Empyrean didn't give any instructions, but you actually used his name to do what you want?" The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor coldly snorted. Xiahou hurriedly bowed. "Xiahou doesn't dare." "You really don't dare?" The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor stared at Xiahou as she coldly asked. "I'm asking you now, you better answer truthfully or you will have to bear the consequences. Firstly, did you participate in the matters of the Emperor Pavilion?" Xiahou's back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He didn't really care about the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor, but her words could very well represent the Livefire Empyrean. He couldn't help but to be cautious and replied, "I received the Livefire Empyrean's orders to invite Tian. That fellow didn't give face to the Livefire Empyrean just because of his status as a weaponsmith grandmaster. He was simply too brazen. I didn't interfere in this matter and merely closed one eye, wanting to teach Tian a lesson." "Let me ask you one more time. When you recruited Tian, did you follow the Livefire Empyrean's instructions and told him that if he agreed, the Livefire Empyrean would be willing to give him a position equal to a governor? You better answer me truthfully." The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor's voice was filled with imposingness. Although her cultivation base was inferior to Xiahou, she had stayed in the Livefire Palace for a long time and was by the Livefire Empyrean's side. Her aura was naturally extraordinary. She wasn't a fool and wouldn't believe everything just because of a few sentences Tian said. Hence she came to ask Xiahou. No matter what Xiahou said to Tian, as long as she understood the crux of it, she would be able to determine the root of the problem. And Xiahou's promise was the crux of the matter. Or could it be that you only want Tian to be your subordinate? The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor continued asking when she saw Xiahou not replying. Xiahou's expression changed. At this instant, the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor finally understood what was going on. Seems like this Xiahou was used to being lofty. As expected, he dared to feign obedience in public but oppose in private. "Palace Lord, please forgive me. Xiahou only wholeheartedly works for the Livefire Empyrean. I wanted to recruit him to be my subordinate first and nurture him well, allowing him to do his best to forge weapons for the Livefire Palace." Xiahou bowed, feeling some trepidation in his heart. What a good governor Xiahou. The Purple Moon Immortal Emperor coldly spoke. "You can handle this matter yourself. The Livefire Empyrean doesn't want to hear any gossip." After speaking, the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor flicked her sleeves and left. Governor Xiahou's expression was extremely ugly to behold as cold sweat appeared on his back. Chapter 1591. The matter of the Emperor Pavilion continued to ferment, spreading unceasingly. Now that the 3 months deadline was approaching, the Emperor Pavilion might very well move away from Livefire City. Many people were extremely unhappy. The strength of a city depended on whether there was an endless supply of fresh blood. If everyone followed Governor Xiahou's example, who would dare to establish a power in Livefire City in the future? In addition, Grandmaster D's capabilities were clear to everyone. Many people were still thinking of auctioning off the treasures Grandmaster D personally forged. But now, Grandmaster D was actually forced away by Governor Xiahou. This was naturally something many people weren't willing to see. Hence, The rumor spread even more ferociously. However, everything seemed to be irreversible. The 3 months deadline was approaching and the Emperor Pavilion most probably wouldn't be able to turn the tables. The governor's manor's authority was too great. It was basically impossible to affect them with just public opinion. The arrogant governor Xiahou didn't care. In this world where cultivation reigned supreme, as long as you were strong enough, there was no need to care about the opinions of others or the curses of the outside world. Xiahou was the king of this region. If Xiahou wanted the Emperor Pavilion to disappear, the Emperor Pavilion would naturally disappear. Many people who were acquainted with Di Tian even came to the Emperor Pavilion to console him. There were also some major powers who invited Di Tian to be a guest elder. Even if the Emperor Pavilion that he founded couldn't continue to exist, a Grandmaster weaponsmith like Di Tian was still extremely popular. But at this moment the governor's manor acted. Using iron-blooded methods, they directly captured a group of people. After that, they announced to the central city regions that they had already captured all the people who caused trouble for the Emperor Pavilion and sent them to jail, telling the Emperor Pavilion to open its doors to the outside world. There was no need to worry about people causing trouble. When the governor's manor released this news, countless people in the central city regions were stunned. This sudden reversal of the situation caused them to have no idea what was going on. Did the governor's manor compromise? Amidst all the curses and curses, the governor's manor actually captured the mastermind, allowing the Emperor Pavilion to open its doors to the outside world. What was going on exactly? Also, the governor's manor was extremely secretive about this matter. They didn't tell anyone who the mastermind was. This point caused many people to speculate. Seems like the waters behind this were extremely deep. But at least this matter was temporarily resolved. The time limit of 3 months was up and the Emperor Pavilion reconvened. Because of the scandal caused by a single announcement, Grandmaster Di took out 3 Emperor-ranked weapons to be auctioned. This caused the Emperor Pavilion to be filled to the brim with people today. It was unknown how many people came to the Emperor Pavilion. The number was 10 times more compared to when the Emperor Pavilion was at its peak. Those who came to the Emperor Pavilion for trading were all extremely happy. The Grand Supervisor of the Emperor Pavilion, Mo Fei and Mo Junyi, were extremely busy. The entire Emperor Pavilion was bustling with activity, causing many people to laugh. So it turned out that the governor's manor was intentionally helping the Emperor Pavilion. If Governor Xiahou heard this, it was unknown if he would cough out blood or not. Xiahou's mood wasn't too good. Compared to the flourishing atmosphere of the Emperor Pavilion, the Great Hall of the Governor's Manor was extremely quiet. Other than Governor Xiahou, only the clan leaders of the Yan clan, Han clan and Wei clan were here. Governor Xiahou, didn't you say that Di Tian has offended the Lifire Empyrean? Why are you still capturing our people? The Han clan leader asked, his tone filled with unhappiness. Back then, all of them had sent gifts to Xiahou and this matter was something that Xiahou had tacitly agreed to. Now Xiahou suddenly wanted to capture several of their immortal emperors? What did this mean? That's right, Governor Xiahou. Back then it was you who tacitly agreed to this. Aren't you going a little overboard by doing this today? The people from the Wei clan were also extremely unhappy. They came here to demand their people back, but Xiahou actually wasn't prepared to hand them over. Hence their tone naturally changed. Although Xiahou was a governor and had great authority, they were all aristocratic clans with deep roots. They wouldn't allow Xiahou to bully them as he wished. One must know that in the northern city regions there was a Jialong clan. Even the Lifire Empyrean couldn't do anything to them, let alone a mere governor. Although they were far from being as powerful as the Jialong clan, they were still a powerful aristocratic clan. If they joined forces, Xiahou wouldn't have an easy time. When did this governor agree to anything? Xiahou's expression turned black. Being questioned like this, his eyes were extremely cold as he swept his gaze over to the 3 clan leaders. The 3 clan heads seemed to have sensed Commander Xiahou's anger. Their eyes flashed, and when they heard Xiahou's words, they were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They remembered that Xiahou had been talking nonsense to them all this time. And indeed he didn't say a single word clearly. It was only when they left that the deputy commander gave them a hint. But it wasn't Xiahou who said it, and it was a hint. The tone of the 3 clan leaders is so overbearing. If this seat doesn't release our people today, Are you going to act against me? Xiaoho's expression turned heavy. Lord Governor, you misunderstood. We are only anxious. The Han clan leader started for a moment before his tone eased a little. Governor Xiaoho, the people you captured are all immortal emperors. We naturally hope that they will be safe and sound, but we have no intentions of forcing you. The Wei clan leader spoke. Humph. Xiaoho coldly snorted. Since you guys want an answer so much, this seat will tell you. Because this matter caused such a commotion, the Livefire Empyrean side is somewhat unhappy and wanted me to shut everyone's mouths. I can only do this. I will naturally think of a way to capture your people, but if you guys force me, I might have to investigate all the way to the end. The Yin clan leader started. This was clearly a threat. The three clan leaders felt somewhat awkward, but they still admitted defeat. Lord Governor, there's no need to be anxious. We naturally know that Lord Governor will settle this matter. Since this is the case, we will hand this matter over to Governor Xiaoho to handle. Xiaoho didn't say anything. After that, the three clan leaders bid their farewell and departed. After they exited the governor's manor, their expressions instantly turned extremely heavy. Similarly, Xiaoho, who was in the governor's manor, his eyes flashed with coldness, feeling extremely unhappy. How did Ditian manage to turn the tables exactly? Why did the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor come down to investigate this matter? Was it really because of public opinion? Also, why did the Purple Moon Immortal Emperor's questions directly hit the crux of the matter? She asked him if he had followed the Livefire Empyrean's words and promised Ditian a position equivalent to a governor. This matter definitely wouldn't happen for no reason. After the Emperor Pavilion reopened, it grew more and more prosperous. It was much more popular compared to before, like it had experienced a rebirth. The three aristocratic clans no longer dared to act recklessly. Right now, they were all at the heart of the storm, and the governor's manor kept delaying the release of the captives. How would they dare to cause trouble again? Only until many days later, Governor Xiaoho made a trip to the Livefire Palace to scout the situation, and after he returned, he understood that the Livefire Empyrean wouldn't care about this matter anymore. Only then did he secretly release the captives. This matter didn't attract the attention of anyone. The Emperor Pavilion also didn't publicize this matter, as though it had already forgotten about it. The Emperor Pavilion naturally understood that at this moment, it was best for them to quietly expand their strength. In addition, after this matter, the Emperor Pavilion expanded once again, recruiting guest elders and even sparing no expense. Ditian and Mofei both believed that as long as they continued to expand, the people they nurtured would definitely be rewarded. To Ditian, it didn't matter even if he temporarily earned less. What he pursued wasn't just short-term benefits. Hence, Ditian once again came to the southern governor's manor to pay a visit to Beauty Xiao. This time around, it was naturally to express his thanks. He didn't believe that the Livefire Empyrean's woman would only appear in his Emperor Pavilion because of the rumors of the outside world. Clearly, Beauty Xiao had helped him in the shadows. Ditian was brought to an elegant room. A moment later, an incomparably beautiful figure walked over. It was none other than the southern governor, Beauty Xiao. At this moment, she was only clad in a bathrobe. The bathrobe wrapped around her body, concealing her figure that would cause one's imagination to run wild. She was barefooted, her beautiful legs were completely exposed to Ditian. Clearly, she had just finished bathing. Beauty Xiao, who had just finished bathing, still exuded a faint fragrance. Her wet hair cascaded down her shoulders, extremely alluring. Ditian sweated. Should I leave first? You've already seen me, what's the point of leaving? Beauty Xiao's beautiful eyes giggled as she stared at Ditian. Why? Has the matter with the Emperor Pavilion been resolved? I specially came here to thank you. Ditian nodded. Oh, how do you want to thank me? Why don't you help me change? Beauty Xiao laughed. Ditian replied, Beauty Xiao, could it be that you don't know that doing this will cause people to make mistakes? Oh, in that case, I really want to see how you will make mistakes. Beauty Xiao's smile grew even more charming. As long as Beauty Xiao doesn't mind, I will definitely profit. Ditian slowly walked up. Beauty Xiao smiled. I'll say it again. Take off your mask first and let me take a look. If not, you will see me naked, but I don't even know what you look like. Wouldn't that be too disadvantageous? In that case, forget it. Ditian shook his head. Beauty, this time around the Emperor Pavilion's crisis has been resolved. Many thanks. In the future, if you need me to do anything, just directly send a message to me. This is my messaging crystal. Beauty Xiao smiled. After that, she sent a strand of her immortal sense into it as well as her own messaging crystal, exchanging strands of immortal sense with each other. I'll bid my farewell first. If I keep looking at you like this, I might make a mistake. Ditian laughed. After that, he turned and left, holding the messaging crystal in his hands. The smile on Beauty Xiao's face grew even more charming. She has never met such an interesting person before. What does this fellow look like exactly? Qin Wentian of the northern city regions, Di Tian of the central regions. These two people both have the word Tian in their names. How interesting. Before this, I was still very interested in Qin Wentian, but now this fellow is so low profile that it's terrifying. On the other hand, an interesting person like Di Tian actually appeared in Xiaoho's territory. Seems like things are going to get lively in Lifire City. Beauty Xiao mumbled to herself, subconsciously comparing Qin Wentian and Di Tian. Di Tian was famous for his combat prowess. He killed his way into the Emperor Palace of the Jialan monarch, and could even fight against peak-stage immortal emperors. As for Di Tian, he was famous for his formations and weaponsmithing. He could even forge high-grade emperor-ranked weapons. Out of these two, who would be more interesting? Chapter 1592. After the Emperor Pavilion experienced this calamity, it was like it had broken out of a cocoon and was reborn. Its popularity grew more and more. Because of Di Tian's fame, as well as the scandal of the governor's manor, everyone in Lifire City knew about the Emperor Pavilion. As time passed, the Emperor Pavilion grew stronger and stronger. Everyone in the central city regions could already predict that there would be another new superpower rising up. Also, this new superpower had no support from any aristocratic clan. There was only a single person, Grandmaster D. Time flowed by, the Emperor Pavilion underwent several expansions. The number of experts in the Emperor Pavilion grew more and more, and the space it occupied was expanded by more than 10 times. Right now, looking down from the air, numerous majestic buildings could be seen, and there was an endless flow of people. Many people were conducting transactions in the Emperor Pavilion, and the place with the most activity was undoubtedly the auction house. Every time an auction was held, a huge commotion would occur. Right now, the number of people coming to the Emperor Pavilion to seek treasures was countless. Today, Qin Wentian walked through the Emperor Pavilion's trading market, staring at the crowd as a faint smile appeared on his face. He didn't expect that the Emperor Pavilion would develop so well. In just a short span of a few decades, the Emperor Pavilion had already grown to such a scale. In fact, it was already faintly comparable to the other top-tier auction houses in the northern city regions. The popularity of the Emperor Pavilion wasn't inferior to the auction houses controlled by the Han and Wei clans. During these years, you and the Grand Supervisor have worked hard. Di Tian spoke in a light voice. There was a beautiful immortal emperor beside him. It was none other than the eldest miss of the Mo clan, Mo Junyi. During these years, it was mainly Mo Fei who managed the Emperor Pavilion with Mo Junyi assisting him. As for him as the Pavilion Lord, he spent most of his time on weapon forging and cultivation, rarely managing the affairs of the Emperor Pavilion. You don't have to thank me. If it wasn't for you supporting us from the back, the Emperor Pavilion wouldn't have today. Mo Junyi spoke from the bottom of her heart. Her beautiful eyes filled with worship when she stared at Di Tian. She truly admired Di Tian. Right now, the divine weapons created by Di Tian were no longer limited to sealing-type divine weapons. Although sealing-type divine weapons were very powerful and the demand for them was very high, the Emperor Pavilion also needed the stimulation of other types of divine weapons. And Di Tian would often be able to forge some extraordinary divine weapons, causing people to have high expectations of the Emperor Pavilion. The rules set by Di Tian back then, the strategy of the auction house also played an extraordinary role. Am I the hands-off boss? Di Tian laughed self-mockingly. Don't forget, back then when our Emperor Pavilion was in danger, everyone thought that our Emperor Pavilion would collapse. Although I don't know what you did at that time, you did your best to turn the tides. Most probably, the reason why the serving girl of the palace lord came to our Emperor Pavilion to mock us was also because of your scheming. Qin Wentian smiled. Mo Junyi smiled. After that crisis, she and Mo Fei had made many guesses, but they still couldn't figure out what Di Tian had done exactly. All right, you don't have to continue praising me. Let's hope the Emperor Pavilion gets better and better. Di Tian laughed. The Lifefire Palace was one of the 9 world palaces of the lifelong realm. There were also 9 monarchs under the Lifefire Palace who were in charge of all the mines and resources in the lifelong realm. However, the Lifefire Empyrean himself also controlled some mines, and these mines were extremely important. His control over them was much stronger compared to monarchs. If not, the Lifefire Empyrean wouldn't be in charge of them personally. The Eclipse Mine was one of the main mines controlled by the Lifefire Empyrean. The Lifefire Empyrean's trusted subordinates would personally supervise the mining. The Eclipse Mine vein was located in a mountain range 10,000 miles away from Lifefire City. The terrain here was extremely complicated, and the entire mountain range was heavily guarded. In fact, there were many powerful formations hidden within. If one dared to barge in recklessly, they would definitely die a terrible death. Just the formations here alone were enough to prevent immortal emperors from entering, never to exit. As for bandits, even for supreme bandits, they wouldn't dare to touch the Eclipse Mine easily. This mine not only had extremely strong defenses, there was even a 2-way teleportation array that led directly to the Lifefire Empyrean. As long as something happened here, the Lifefire Empyrean would be able to rush over in the shortest amount of time. Those who dared to barge in here were simply courting death. But even with such tight defenses, there were still many immortal emperors guarding the Eclipse Mine. The one in the lead was a trusted aide of the Lifefire Empyrean, the younger brother of the palace lord's wife. Within the mountain range, there were many caves that led to the depths of the mountain range. There were also some spatial gates hidden in the darkness that led directly to the mine. The true Eclipse Mine was boundlessly vast, like a constellation. There was simply no end to it. Terrifying law energy flowed within the mine, causing the entire mine to be dark red in color and extremely hot. The temperature of this mine was very high, and it was extremely dangerous. Hence, the cultivation bases of the people in this mine were all very high. Only immortal kings and above had the qualifications to come here to mine for ores. If one stood in the air and looked down, they would be able to see an incomparably vast dark red land with black flames radiating from it. Resplendent beams of light could be seen everywhere, shooting up into the sky. These were all signs of the appearance of emperor-ranked stones. In the Eclipse Mine, even emperor-ranked stones could be seen frequently. It wasn't rare at all. Right now, Qin Wentian was in the Eclipse Mine. The Eclipse Mine vein wasn't the same as the one in the Jialan monarch's territory. It would only be open once every 10 years, but it would be open once every year. The reason was because the ores in this mine were simply too precious. Even if the ores were only excavated once every year, the value would still be extremely terrifying. No mistakes were allowed. Hence, Qin Wentian wasn't worried that he would miss the chance to report back to the Lifefire Palace once every 10 years. In truth, during these tens of years, other than killing 3 vice-governors using iron-blooded methods, he was as low profile as what the outside world said. Many people said that he was the same as many governors in the past, doing his best to avoid trouble in case he offended the Jialan clan. Hence, he decided to go into closed-door seclusion, not stepping out of the governor's manor. During these years he spent all his energy on cultivation, but it wasn't purely because he was in closed-door seclusion. He would often roam the outside world to temper himself, and right now, he was even mining in the Eclipse Mine. Naturally, he didn't come here with his original identity, he was in disguise. At this moment he was traversing the mine, his speed was extremely fast. Occasionally, he would see Emperor light flashing and he would rush over to snatch the Emperor-ranked stones. His entire person exuded a cold aura. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt as though he was in an illusion. He inclined his head and stared into the distance, only to see a resplendent beam of light radiating forth, illuminating the entire space. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed as he directly soared through the air with an inconceivable speed. Very swiftly, he arrived at the location where the beam of light originated from. The light was dark red in color, but it was terrifyingly bright. The entire sky seemed to be dyed red in color as the light cascaded downwards. In front of him there was a dark red stone that seemed to be absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. The terrifying red light radiating from it directly pierced through the sky, resembling a torrent of destruction from hell, shooting up into the clouds. Many experts came, but they were all very far away. No one dared to get close. Those who tried to get close earlier were already incinerated into ashes. Arg! A scream of misery rang out. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. He only saw an immortal nearing the stone. Just as he neared the boundary of the light, his entire body was instantly engulfed in flames. From the ground up, that immortal was directly incinerated into nothingness. Boom! An extremely terrifying immortal emperor stepped forward, moving towards the center of the tempest. Terrifying laws of earth could be felt from his body, enveloping him. His entire person was like an indestructible rock. Emperor light from the sky shone down on him as he moved closer step by step, brimming with a strong will. A beam of dark red light slammed into that immortal emperor's body of laws. It was like a strange flower of darkness, instantly penetrating his body of laws. The black flames directly seeped into his body. That immortal emperor screamed in agony, wanting to retreat, but how could he have the chance? The flames instantly engulfed him, and in an instant, a black gas could be seen drifting in the air. That immortal emperor's body had already completely vanished. No one dared to get close anymore. They all stared at the stone like they were looking at a devil. Qin Wentian's face was also filled with shock. This was the power of the minds in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Sometimes the treasures that appeared were so terrifying that it caused people to feel despair. An immortal emperor who had cultivated for countless years might even be inferior to a stone, able to directly destroy you. Transcending Emperor Stone. Someone at the side spoke as his heart pounded. Qin Wentian's gaze was incomparably hot. He had to obtain it no matter what. However, for such a terrifying treasure, even if it was an interspatial ring, it would be instantly incinerated. How could he obtain it? There were experts who sent out palm imprints, wanting to use law energy to bury this terrifying stone before keeping it. However, their palm imprints were the same, directly destroyed. With an intention of his will, Qin Wentian's spatial energy slowly gushed forth, wanting to isolate the destructive red storm. But when the spatial law energy descended, it was similarly destroyed. There was no way for him to block it. In the airspace above the mine, more and more experts flew over. These were the protectors of the Eclipse mine. They were clad in dark red armor and exuded an imposing aura. There were even immortal emperors whose eyes gleamed with a terrifying light. Should we inform the outside world? Someone asked. Let's give it a try first. If it doesn't work, we will inform the palace lord. The person in the lead had a sharp look on his face as he stared at the terrifying dark red storm ahead. It felt like the end of the world had arrived. That dark red light continued expanding, corroding everything. This transcending Emperor Stone was truly difficult to obtain. Only Empyrean-level characters had the qualifications to use it for cultivation. In fact, they couldn't even tell the exact grade of the stone. Chapter 1593. Seems like this place has long been burned clean, Qin Wentian mumbled. He then asked, was this or discovered recently? In that case, what was it that blocked its energy from being unleashed before? Right now, the once-a-decade tribute day had arrived again. However, the northern governor's manor was completely deserted. No one took the initiative to come here to pay tribute. It was so quiet that it caused people to feel a sense of pressure. However, the people of the governor's manor were already used to it. Tell Suli to gather people and prepare to move out, Qin Wentian calmly spoke. The butler at the side felt his heart trembling violently. Were they going to act now? They silently returned to the northern governor's manor. This governor's manor that had been silent for tens of years was as quiet as before, like it didn't exist at all. In fact, it was gradually ignored by many major powers in the northern city regions. The influence of the governor's manor was simply too weak, so weak that even some minor powers didn't come here to pay tribute. Even if they took the initiative to go to the northern governor's manor to collect the tribute, it wasn't easy. The northern governor's manor only existed in name. Pay immediately. Suli couldn't be bothered to waste words. He directly spoke, his tone cold to the extreme. Did I ask you a question? Qin Wentian glanced over. When the butler saw that pair of eyes, he felt his entire body shivering. He was as silent as a cicada in winter and directly shut his mouth. The formation of the transcending Emperor Stone requires special conditions. If we compare it to humans, it's like breaking through from the Empyrean realm to the Empyrean realm. This was why it could erupt forth with such terrifying destructive might. Before this, its power might not have been fully formed yet. An immortal emperor at the side spoke, staring ahead. This type of offensive transcending Emperor Stone, no immortal emperor would be able to take it away. The immortal emperor beside him nodded. Qin Wentian didn't say anything more. He found a place to sit down as his immortal sense gushed forth, quietly sensing this energy. He didn't attempt to test it out. Although he was extraordinary, Qin Wentian didn't feel that he would be stronger than all immortal emperors. Such destructive might wasn't something he could come into contact with. The loophole of this ancient river auction house is the most obvious. Evil Emperor, what do you think about taking them as an example? Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice, as though he was speaking of an insignificant matter. The butler at the side felt his heart pounding violently as he replied in a low voice, Governor, the power behind the ancient river auction house is extremely terrifying. In addition, the Jialan clan is behind this. What does the governor's manner mean by this? Old He's eyes turned completely cold as he asked icily. Could it be that he really wanted to touch them? So this or is not fated with us? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice. During these 10 years, my transaction pavilion has encountered many troubles, but we've never disturbed the governor's manor before. We would handle everything ourselves and the scale of our transactions hasn't changed at all. Governor Su, don't you think it's a little inappropriate for you to suddenly say that my transaction pavilion is a third-tier power? The shopkeeper coldly spoke. Governor Su, these transaction pavilions all depend on my ancient river auction house to survive. If you guys cause such a ruckus, wouldn't it affect the business of my auction house? Old He spoke, sounding a little unhappy. Vice Governor Su, we aren't prepared yet. Can we slow things down and go to the ancient river auction house to collect the tributes first? The shopkeeper of the transaction pavilion smiled. Many people in the surroundings had smiles on their faces as well, but they didn't say anything. Ancient river auction house? Since when did the governor's manor dare to collect the tributes from the ancient river auction house? Governor Su, what do you mean by this? The shopkeeper's eyes turned cold, feeling extremely unhappy. Old He, these people from the governor's manor actually want to upgrade our transaction pavilion? We have to pay 10 times the amount of tributes. A shopkeeper glanced at the immortal emperor as he spoke. If we make a move against the ancient river auction house, it would indeed save us a lot of trouble. The other powers would all see this and there's naturally no need for us to act. The evil emperor nodded lightly, agreeing with Qin Wentian's opinion. In the dossier room of the governor's manor, Qin Wentian quietly flipped through the dossier. Beside him, the butler, serving girls and the evil emperor were all present. The shopkeeper pointed at Su Li in anger. His entire body was trembling from anger. Seems like this Su Li came here prepared. Was he using them to establish his might? When they saw the experts from outside, all of them were clad in the governor's manor's robes. At this moment, no matter who it was, they all understood that something was wrong. Many major characters in the supreme ancient immortal realms didn't excavate the entire mine, but chose to excavate it slowly instead. This should be one of the reasons. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. Ores could absorb the essence of heaven and earth. Even the radiance of the stars could gradually transform. How miraculous was this? The shopkeeper's gaze instantly froze as his smile stiffened. He lowered his head and glanced at the amount of tributes. A third-grade power compared to a fourth-grade power would have to pay 10 times more. Not yet. During these years, we followed the governor's orders and secretly sent people to investigate. Because the various hegemonic powers no longer have any wariness towards the governor's manor, the things they did were extremely brazen and could even be said to be filled with loopholes. As long as we send these people, we would be able to easily find out what happened in the ancient river auction house. The butler replied. Right. The evil emperor didn't say anything more. He only nodded and walked out. During these years, the time he interacted with Qin Wentian was very short. This new governor, other than killing the 3 vice-governors back then, rarely appeared in his line of sight. but every time he appeared, he would give off an intense sense of pressure. Back then, he was very clear about the death of the 3 vice-governors. Such a character had endured for tens of years, and also secretly sent people to gather information on the various hegemonic powers, as well as the methods they used in the dark. Once he acted, what would the situation be like? He quietly sensed this marvelous energy for a very long time. Until the time limit of a year was up, the Livefire Empyrean still didn't appear, allowing the ore to unleash its shocking might. To a palace lord, there were simply too many places he controlled. Even if an ore of this level appeared, it wasn't sufficient for him to personally make a trip there. If that was the case, wouldn't he have no time to cultivate and could only be busy with trivial matters? It's not that they don't have any wariness. More accurately, they basically don't care about the governor's manor's existence. Qin Wentian laughed as though he was mocking himself. However, when the butler saw Zhang Junyi's face, his heart involuntarily trembled. Did the governor's manor want to target the ancient river auction house? Every time the butler thought of this, he would feel his hair standing on end. Most probably, someone was going to be in for a bad time. The crowd was whispering to each other. Just as they were speaking, Su Li had already brought his men over, his eyes gleaming with a cold light. After a short moment, they arrived at a trading pavilion. The shopkeeper inside smiled as he glanced at Su Li. After that, he shifted his gaze elsewhere, completely treating Su Li like air. The ancient river auction house was located in the center of the transaction pavilions. There were many people coming and going. It was extremely lively. At this moment, many people from the auction house were rushing over here, wanting to spectate. What was going on with the governor's manor this time around? It seemed like something big was about to happen. Look, the people from the governor's manor are here. At this moment, someone glanced ahead only to see a group of experts walking over. They were all clad in the governor's manor's robes. Su Li glanced at them, but he didn't say anything. At this moment, a group of experts rushed over from outside. At the same time, a powerful aura descended from the air as a group of experts appeared. The person in the lead was none other than the evil emperor. They only have this little bit of ability. Even that governor has to tuck his tail between his legs. What can the other people in the governor's manor do? Most probably, they were frightened by the soul-slaying formation back then. Su Li walked into the transaction pavilion and calmly spoke. The governor's manor is here to collect the tributes. I almost forgot, it's the day of collecting the tributes again. These people from the governor's manor don't do proper things but are actually very proactive in collecting the tributes. Someone laughed. Qin Wentian continued to stay in the Eclipse mine for several years before he left. Although he only left behind 10% of the total amount of ore, his harvest was still quite good. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to Dtion's harvest. Mining required one to mine ores one by one, and there would often be the danger of being plundered or killed. How could it be as comfortable as a weaponsmith grandmaster running an auction house? But to Qin Wentian, what was more important wasn't mining. It was knowledge and experience. Has everything been sorted out? There shouldn't be any mistakes, right? Qin Wentian flipped through the scrolls as he asked. Although it was rare to find transcending emperor stones, they would still appear frequently. He only needed to know about this matter and order his men to record it down. When there's time, he would come here to collect them all at once. At this moment, an immortal emperor walked out from the ancient river auction house with many people behind him. He glanced at the surroundings and asked, "What happened?" He turned his gaze to the major powers in the surroundings. At this moment, many people could feel that something was amiss. Other than Su Li, the other 2 vice-governors were also in charge of 2 transaction pavilions and the atmosphere was tense. Qin Wentian stared ahead. This entire mine had transformed into a blood-red hell. Gradually, red liquid could be seen flowing everywhere. All the mines in this vast region had been destroyed. If one lowered their heads and gazed downwards, there seemed to be a sea of blood there, seething with a terrifying aura of destruction. The ancient river auction house was an extremely large auction house in the northern city regions. This auction house had already become a well-developed market with many transaction pavilions in the surroundings. Every day there would be large groups of experts coming here to trade. This is the standard for the tribute. In the past, your transaction pavilion was a 4th-tier power. But during these years, Your trading pavilion has been growing stronger and stronger. Right now it's a third-tier power. According to the new standard, pay the tribute immediately. Suli took out a piece of paper that landed before the manager. Many experts sped over, staring at the situation here. Something seemed to be wrong. Suli waved his hand. In an instant, the people from the governor's manor behind him stepped forward, directly surrounding the transaction pavilion. The expression of the manager instantly turned extremely unsightly. Suli coldly spoke. I'll give you the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. If you don't pay the tribute, this transaction pavilion will be sealed immediately. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.